Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Backlash. I'm your host, David J. Reilly, and I'm in a great mood today, actually. Normally, I'm kind of, I don't know, I'm all over the place, but today I'm in a fantastic mood. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Please, before we get too far along, make sure you smash the like button. Make sure that you're following the Backlash on our Rumble channel or YouTube channel. We'll go through all that. We're on X at Real Backlash. Make sure you're following us there. Of course, our website that I need to update, thebacklash.net, has all of our episodes. You can support the show on subscribestar.com/thebacklash, patreon.com/thebacklash. We are live tonight. It is 3:05 on Wednesday, April 22nd, covering breaking news. So if you want to send some super chats or Rumble rants, we will read those out as we go. If you, of course, have any questions for the guests, of which there are many this evening, you'll be able to do that. You can also, let's see. Oh, what's going on? Rumble's not working? Come on, you. Get up here. We're on Rumble at Backlash Podcast, of course, and we're on YouTube at Real Backlash. Thank you again for joining us. We've got a lot to cover tonight. It's going to be an interesting show. The Southern Poverty Law Center was indicted by a grand jury. So we're going to be talking about that. But first, I do have to give a shout out to all of the sponsors that make this show possible before we get started, before we introduce our guests. First up, of course, ODGG Supply. They are the Pacific Northwest's premier dealer of military surplus equipment. If you're going blanky mode or if you're going tactical bug out mode, these guys have got you covered with all the equipment that you would need: MREs, food rations, tents, backpacks. What are those, sleeping bags? Yeah, they've got everything, man. Over at odggsupply.com, use promo code BACKLASH14 for 14% off. Of course, Antelope Hill Publishing, they're fighting to keep history alive amidst a regime of anti-white censorship. Use promo code BACKLASH10 for 10% off. And same promo code works at Above Time Coffee Roasters, pro-white, non-kosher coffee from AboveTimeCoffee.com. Idaho Tallow Company, they make soap and skincare products that won't make you gay. Very good, handcrafted here in North Idaho by a small family company. And of course, if you are worried about your money being stolen from you through inflation and money printing, you might want to get some gold and silver from our friends at atlasbullion.com/backlash. And here we are. First, I am going to be introducing our in-studio guest. We've got none other than Casey Whalen joining us. Casey, how are you tonight?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, Dave. Appreciate it.
Very good. Casey has done a lot of work, a lot of independent journalism discussing the human rights networks that were funded and collaborating with the Southern Poverty Law Center here in North Idaho starting in the early 1980s and on. We will be diving into that. We also have joining us Ken Silva. He is the editor-in-chief of Headlines USA. He has been following all of the stuff from Patcon to the January 6th riots, Charlottesville, all of that. So look at this. It's like we got the gang back together. You know, we're using the camera angles that haven't been used on the show. But Ken, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm really fired up for the topic tonight. It's not often that I give flowers to the DOJ, but this is one of the juiciest cases I've ever seen. So really, really excited to break it down with you both.
Absolutely. And first, before we get too far along, I think that the situation warrants a little preemptive celebration, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we got a nice bottle of bubbly from our friends over at Costco.
Spare no expense, Dave.
Please don't. Please don't. All right.
Don't spill them on your books there.
Yeah, here you go. There's a little for you. Here's a little for me. We'll pour some on the floor for Ken.
I got my coffee. So.
There you go. Cheers. So the SPLC was indicted. We have the, let's see here. Here is the actual indictment. We might go through this in a little bit, but there are certainly some passages here that are just absolutely unbelievable. Ken, let's start with you. What have your thoughts been reading the lawsuit, or the indictment? I take it back. It's not a lawsuit. It's an indictment. This went before a grand jury. And was it 13 people basically found the Southern Poverty Law Center guilty of wire fraud and money laundering? Tell us your initial thoughts.
Yeah, and I'm not actually as interested in the actual crimes as I am about the kind of juicy details in the indictment. And basically the upshot is that the SPLC has been giving, Klansmen and neo-Nazis literally millions of dollars for seemingly decades. I guess the indictment, the actual payments in the indictment are only recorded from 2014 to 2023, which really isn't as interesting. I think a lot of the old heads in the movement were kind of boomers by then. I don't see what the SPLC could have gotten for its money, but nevertheless, the organizations have really historic roots. We're talking about like the National Alliance, the National Socialist Movement, American Front, Aryan Nations. I mean, these groups have gone back to the 80s, and there's a whole long story to talk about provocateurs, both with groups like the SPLC and also with federal law enforcement, FBI, ATF, and what have you. And so that's what I'm really interested in, sort of the historical perspective on this whole case.
Yes. Now, one of the things that I did want to kind of bring up here is that we are only getting a very small sliver of the Southern Poverty Law Center's informant program with this disclosure. According to the documents, correct me if I'm wrong, but this spans the time period of 2018 to 2023. Now, for those of us that have been paying attention, there are a lot of books, and I've got like a stack of books here that everybody should probably go out and either get or you could rent it from, archive.org. But here's a book, a very interesting book, Birchers. How the John Birch Society radicalized the American right, okay? This book goes over a long series of infiltrations by the Anti-Defamation League, the Southern Poverty Law Center, into the foundation of the John Birch Society, which was the 1960s? So these guys have been operating in this way, paying informants, infiltrating what they, consider to be radical movements, and then disrupting them. This has been their playbook since the beginning, frankly, since the foundation of even like the Anti-Defamation League in 1913. So we're only getting a small sliver of this. But I do want to point out that in this indictment, the names of the Southern Poverty Law Center's fictitious entities that were used. Let's take a look at this real quick. We have the Center Investigative Agency, or CIA for short, okay? Fox Photography. This one's interesting. I feel like this is going to be more relevant here in the Pacific Northwest. Northwest Technologies. Then there is Tech Writers Group and Rare Books Warehouse. And these were the names of the entities that were routing payments from the Southern Poverty Law Center to these neo-Nazis. Ken, can you talk about this a little bit and what you've seen in your journalism regarding this type of subterfuge and money laundering? Tell us about this.
Well, to be frank, it's a little surprising to me that they're actually wiring payments through a corporate structure. Most of my journalism is focused on, just straight cash payments. Handed somebody a bag, which you would think would be a lot smarter to keep this off the books. That's like what Patcon in the 90s is just the FBI spreading around cash, kind of to revive the Aryan nations. It had been obviously a big group, had a huge cultural impact in the 80s, but it was kind of running out of steam in the early 90s as a lot of the guys were either dead or in jail. And then the FBI sets up a front group where they have at least 3 undercover agents and a plethora of informants posing as neo-Nazi bank robbers. And pretty much they were traveling around the country, spreading around cash and making sure people showed up to meetings by incentivizing them with cash and free trips. And that's how they revitalized, that group, which obviously ended in disaster with the Oklahoma City bombing. We could get into more into that a little bit later.
I would love to get into that. Hold on, my hotkeys are a little different here. Are we talking about the Aryan Republican Army? Is that what you're talking about here?
So funny you mentioned that. That's an actual legitimate bank robber group which was running at the same time. I'm talking about, I think it's the Veterans Aryan Movement, VAM. There's a guy named J.M. Berger. If you Google his name and then Patcon, that should show up. The head FBI agent, his name was David Rossi. We don't know if that's his real name or just some kind of code name. But this was the group where they were saying that they were robbing banks, but one informant noticed that, like, well, I've never seen any news coverage about this. And he goes to his handler and says, these guys are talking about robbing banks, but nobody's really heard of them. And then the handler put them in on the secret that actually these guys are playing on our team. They're essentially a front group. The Aryan Republican Army was heavily infiltrated with Secret Service informant and at least one FBI informant too. And there's a lot of suspicion that the FBI was letting them run amok and rob banks on purpose as kind of like a Fast and Furious sting operation where they wanted to let these guys rob banks and then spread money around to all the right-wing groups. And then they were going to arrest everybody and roll them up for this grand conspiracy. But then the Oklahoma City bombing happens and they find out that their own informants were involved in that. And then that kind of put an end to that big plan. It was like they wanted to do a part 2 of what they did with the Order in the 80s, which was a group of legitimate bank robbers. They arrested like 50 people in that case. I think they kind of wanted to repeat that in the 90s.
Yes. Now, with the Order, again, this is like going to be like a book shilling show just because we're only going to be able to scratch the surface of a little bit of this stuff. And you have to be like an absolute dweeb nerd like me or maybe you to go through. I mean, I've gone through almost all of the CIA classified files, the FBI classified in the vault or whatever. I also had the privilege and opportunity of speaking on the phone with the author of this book, The Street Agent, which was written by Wayne McInnes, the FBI senior supervisory resident agent in charge here in Coeur d'Alene from 1984 to 1993. He oversaw the Order investigation. He also oversaw the Ruby Ridge debacle, which, by the way, happened just 1 month after his own adopted daughter, Krista Hazel, stole $300 roundabout from JCPenney and was charged with felony theft by a woman named Christy Wood, who happens to be one of our city councilors and also sat on the board of directors of the Kootenai County Task Force on Human Relations, which itself was an SPLC cutout designed to fight the Aryan nations. So it is incestuous. It is deep, the layers to this thing, the FBI working together with like the Russian mafia, working with the Southern Poverty Law Center, working with Mossad. And then there are other books like this one that we're going to get into, and we'll get into all of this throughout the show. I won't bore Ken with everything here, but this book is really good. Highly recommend you get a copy of it. The Committee of the States by Sherry Seymour. Sherry is and we need to get her on the podcast. I need to get a hold of her again. Last time I talked to her was about a year ago. Sherry used to live here in Post Falls, Idaho. She was a private investigator. She knew firsthand and had worked doing investigative journalism in Southern California, working on the rise of Christian identity, which was a big deal. And especially a big deal when it comes to all of this Patcon, the Order, the Aryan nations, and all of this. It all kind of grew out of these military intelligence networks from General MacArthur and this other guy, William Potter Gale. And so William Potter Gale kind of sets up this militia in Southern California. Eventually, when he passes, that mantle goes to Richard Butler, the head of the Aryan nations here in North Idaho, who I have a source, and I've tweeted about this. I'm not sure if I'll be able to pull it up, but my source, who's done work with Blackwater, he's done work with the CIA, he claims that Richard Butler was a CIA cultural attaché and that the Aryan nations was a part of the CIA's domestic Gladio program, which we don't have any disclosure on yet. But when you look at what they were doing in Operation Gladio in Italy, these extremist neo-Nazi bank robbers that were then laundering their money through the Vatican, well, here in the United States, we had the National Alliance run by William Luther Pierce and the Aryan nations run by Richard Butler. And these bank robbers, the Order, were laundering their money through these churches, which were run by, like, William Luther Pierce worked for Lockheed Martin. He was big in the military-industrial complex. Richard Butler worked at Boeing, and he had several patents. And also, there was a guy named Robert Miles. Let me pull this up. Ken, I don't know if... By the way, this is the first time that we've ever actually spoken. I think we've interacted on Twitter back and forth quite a bit, but this is the first time that we're actually talking. Where is this? Do I not have it? Here it is. So, welcome to the Schizo Show, everybody, where we're totally all over the place. But like, here's one of these things that bugs me, right? So, I tweeted this back in 2024. Daily reminder that there are liberals in Coeur d'Alene that support the Nazis in Ukraine. They spent decades fighting Richard Butler only to turn around at the end of their lives and support the same CIA-backed ideology that they fought against here. And look, the Azov Battalion, using the wolf's angle, it's the same symbol used by the Aryan nations. So you know these people by their symbols. This is, of course, a photo of William Luther Pierce, and his group was at the National Alliance. But, you know, I was having some conversation with somebody that got suspended, and I said, read the FBI files. Robert Murky, Robert Miles, Louis Beam, William Potter Gale, Harold von Braunhut, and Colonel Gayhart were all either in the CIA or some form of military intelligence. Robert Miles literally trained guerrillas in Eastern Europe while working in insurance, right? So this is a newspaper clipping from his obituary, okay? It says, from 1947 to 69, Miles was an insurance executive for the General Accident, Fire, and Life Insurance of Perth, Scotland, representing the company in upstate New York and in Michigan. At the same time, Miles was working to train Eastern European guerrillas for work behind the Iron Curtain. In 1953, his house mysteriously exploded in New York. Miles then moved to Michigan soon after. Now, again, for the non-autist people in the room, Robert Miles became the head of the KKK in Michigan. He was the one that led this charge to blow up school buses when they started busing black students into white schools. He was also an advisor to Richard Butler for the Aryan nations. So I'm just saying, it's really bizarre what's going on here. It seems like you have the Southern Poverty Law Center and the FBI on one side fighting a domestic war against CIA operatives, and they're breaking the law and doing all of this crazy stuff to prosecute this war. But anyway, we are way outside of the bounds of the. Oh wait, who's this? Hold on a second. Who is this? I think we have another special guest coming in. Hold on. Sorry. Like I said, this is going to be kind of a schizo show tonight. So let's welcome our guest. Hold on. Let's see, for everyone. Okay, don't show this again. Sorry, pin. All right, here we go. Let's have a special round of applause for our new guest, Gavin McInnes.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Gavin.
This mic work? I just got a new mic.
Yes, it is working. How are you?
You're hearing bonk, 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 bonk?
No, we're not hearing bonk, bonk. We are hearing it through the
mic.
computer. Yes.
That's gay. All right.
Sorry,
what's up,
Ken.
lad?
Yeah, here, Gavin, I know that your time is valuable as well. Not that Ken's isn't. We've got Ken Silva here with us. He's the editor-in-chief of Headlines USA. He's been following this stuff for a while. But Gavin, you have had a number of run-ins with the Southern Poverty Law Center over the years. Give us your take. What is your initial reaction to hearing about this indictment?
Well, vindication. I mean, I've been screaming this for years. I've said that they're a lie. I've even said that they create hate where there isn't. I mean, you look at a map of hate watch for the SPLC, and it's just pins, pins, pins everywhere. Like the only place there's no pins is where there's no people. And you go, oh, okay, so America is just a cesspool of seething hatred. And it's depressing, it's nihilistic, and more importantly, it's not true. These guys have been brainwashing the normies into thinking that hate lies around every corner. And, you know, it makes people crazy. It made Antifa crazy. It helped get Biden elected. And they don't care about that. It raises a lot of money for them. And, you know, it destroys lives. Like my wife lost all her friends. You know, my kids aren't invited to birthday parties because of this bullshit. The ripples are endless, really. And I just feel like I've been screaming this forever, and finally people realize that I was right.
Well, it wasn't just you. There was a lot of us that have been screaming about this stuff for a very, very long time. Of course, the Southern Poverty Law Center, they came after, hold on, let's get the right one up here. They came after me. They came after my family, my parents' radio stations. Cost us millions of dollars. Millions of dollars.
Wow.
Oh, absolutely. Because after Charlottesville, I got doxxed as a Nazi for going down there with the radio station to cover the rally. I filmed the rally. I sold my footage to like Dateline NBC and like Steven Spielberg or something. And for that, I got turned around and labeled a Nazi. Of course, I've kind of become one since then, but
Well, they create hate.
They create hate. They have done such a good job of creating exactly what they say that they have been trying to oppose. So, Ken, let's go back to you for a second. Can you give us some examples of these informants that have been paid? Because you sent me a list in Twitter DMs. I think you've doxed nearly all of their informants. Can you give us a little bit of a heads up on who these people are?
The only one I've been able to confirm myself is F39. And just for people who haven't read the indictment, every SPLC source is referred to an F number. There's only about a dozen listed in the indictment, but it goes as high as F43. So we know that their network was at least 43 informants large. F39 have been able to confirm as former National Alliance accountant Randolph Dillaway. And the reason I was able to do this is because the indictment says that he was paid $6,000 to take the blame for stealing documents and giving them to the SPLC. And there's actually a lot of public reporting on this from around 2016, and a lawsuit was filed over the matter that actually accused Dillaway of being paid by the SPLC, quote, over $5,000 to steal documents and give it to them. So it's kind of interesting that the lawsuit supposed that Dillaway was actually the thief, but now we're learning from this indictment that the thief was somebody else and that he was only paid to take the blame. So the guy who filed this lawsuit, his name's Glenn Allen. He's a attorney that represents the Patriot Front on some of their civil lawsuits. So I reached out to him to see if like this is a game changer for him. And he responded saying, no, like I still know Dillaway was involved in the duplicity. So I don't think he really cares, but it's interesting that there's somebody else who actually stole the documents at the time.
Well, this was something super interesting that I saw somebody talking about yesterday. The SPLC paid a guy to go into the National Alliance headquarters, steal documents. Then he gave the documents to the Southern Poverty Law Center, and then the lawyers at the SPLC told another one of their informants to take credit, to take responsibility for stealing the documents, even though he had nothing to do with it. So then when the National Alliance went to sue the guy that didn't steal the documents, you see what I'm saying? It's a dead end. And the SPLC then protected the informant that they paid to actually steal the documents. Do you see how that works?
They got to keep his cover.
Yes.
That's kind of like what Enrique Tarrio with the Black Lives Matter flag. He didn't take that Black Lives Matter flag off the church. He took the blame. And he becomes a dead end the exact same way.
Interesting. What are your thoughts on Enrique? I haven't seen him since that night. I was actually there with them as they were marching through the streets, and I can't remember for the life of me who actually took the flag down. But what's the latest on the Enrique Tarrio stuff? He's a Fed informant or something?
No, I don't think so. I mean, with Enrique, we had minor differences, and then but when he refused to flip on Trump and he got decades in jail for a riot that he didn't attend, and then went to jail and began his sentence, I was like, all right, the slate is wiped clean. We're good. You're in my good books forever.
Okay, got it. Yeah, I mean, I never really had any issues with Enrique. I always thought he was a good guy. But yeah, man, and this is great. And the accusations are flying. There is one of the people that's listed. Let me pull the tweet up real quick. I had posted this last night. F-37. This is the one we want to know. Who the fuck is F-37? According to the indictment, F-37 was a member of the online leadership chat that planned the 2017 Unite the Right event in Charlottesville, Virginia, and attended the event at the direction of the SPLC. F-37 made racist postings under the supervision of the SPLC and helped coordinate the transportation to the event for several attendees. Between 2015 and 2023, the SPLC secretly paid him $270,000. Now, there's like a lot of speculation over who this is. I've seen the TRS people blaming Richard. I've seen people blaming Mike Enoch. It's a clusterfuck. I think we can rule out Richard, to be fair. According to the Signs versus Kessler lawsuit, he was not a member of the leadership chat that is talked about here. So the person that took this money was both in the chat and at the event. And so that kind of rules a few people out. It wasn't Nick Fuentes. I've been seeing a lot of that. I don't think it was Richard Spencer. Gavin, who do you think it is?
It sounds like Jason Kessler. And I'm 95% sure that Jason was getting SPLC money. But again, that's just my theory. And I'm basing it almost exclusively on vibes. I always had a weird vibe from that dude. He portrayed himself as a sweet little boy who wanted to become a Proud Boy. And I'm familiar with that kind of guy, like a naive, sheltered kid who wants to join a club with dudes. And I was always very kind to him. He even had like a different octave to his voice. And then after Charlottesville, I said, and he wouldn't shut up about getting me to go to Charlottesville, by the way. Like he called me 100 times until I was on the beach with my kids, and I remember this vividly. I fucking snapped. And they go, stop fucking going about this. I'm not going. Drop it, for fuck's sakes. Drop it. You got your thing. Go put on your thing. I don't have to be part of your fucking thing. Because it was like 100 calls. And then when I gave him shit after, and I said, you told me you're not alt-right, and this is all about statues, and you had no idea what was going on. And his tone was different post Charlottesville. He was like, yeah, well, I'm not all right per se, but I am in the sense that I'm an identitarian. And he sounded a lot tougher post Charlottesville. And I'm like, where's this sweet little boy that was hoping to be a Proud Boy? And I should also mention that he was never officially a Proud Boy. He tried to join two different chapters. I think one was San Francisco. And in both cases, they sussed him out and then were like, you're not going to work here. Sorry, it's not happening. So I'm not the only one that always had a bad vibe about this guy. But again, to avoid getting sued by him, I want to make it clear that this is all my personal, emotional, chick-like feeling.
Now, I will say, we're going to get into some stuff, I guess, that has like never really been disclosed before on this show. I've never really talked about Charlottesville publicly. I mean, maybe a little bit here and there. I did a Twitter space last night with Richard Spencer. It's on my X account. You can go listen to that. I think it was kind of interesting. But in the run-up to Charlottesville, I went down there and I met Kessler. We had dinner. I was told about this event. It was sold to me as a way to preserve American heritage and identity because they were going to get rid of the statues. That was the issue. It was an anti-communist thing. It was a patriotic thing. It wasn't supposed to be about like neo-Nazism or national, you know what I mean? Like this was not sold to me anyway as the kind of rally where a bunch of people carrying around swastika flags was going to be. That was just not how it was presented. And so the following day after we had dinner, Jason gave me his phone and I went to, there was a KKK rally about a month before the Charlottesville rally. And I went there and I filmed it. And let's see who this is. Hold on a second. Hold on, everybody. One moment. We've got another person coming in. This is going to be, I told you it was going to be a clusterfuck of a show. All right. We have the former leader of the alt-right himself, Richard Spencer, is now joining us. Oh, there we go. Can we see him? There we go. Hello, Richard.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. I guess let's get your thoughts real quick on the lawsuit or the indictment that has come
it's not
forward.
A lawsuit. It's big time.
Yeah, go ahead. What are your thoughts?
Well, I am overall happy that this is happening because I would like to know the truth about things. And that is one thing that a indictment or criminal suit like this, it could be very good at. The discovery process alone will reveal who F-37 is, the mystery person who was being paid to surveil the alt-right or Charlottesville or give out information or do logistics, etc. So on that count, I'm happy. But I predicted this last night when we talked, and it's actually sort of worse than I expected, which is conservatives are dumb and they come to the wrong conclusion, and they come to a very self-serving conclusion, which is that anyone who isn't, Daily Wire or Matt Walsh or what have you, anyone who isn't in a movement conservative is somehow a puppet, and the people pulling the strings are graduates of Yale University, the military industrial complex, or the SPLC, the deep state, etc. And it's all fake and a sham. The fact is, this indictment does not even suggest that. And it's just a very self-serving thing for conservatives to now say, oh, I knew it was a hoax or something. Charlottesville, again, it's a complicated matter. Charlottesville was not a hoax. Now, was there involvement by bad actors? Yeah. And I knew that already. And there's bad actors everywhere. It's hard to avoid bad actors. There were bad actors in J6, but there were also people who genuinely went there in order to peacefully overthrow the government or whatever the hell they were doing. Perhaps Gavin, as a founder of the Proud Boys, can explain that to us. But
let's keep it nice, everybody.
I heard you were the mastermind of the whole thing, Gavin. That's what I heard, at least.
You heard that I masterminded J6?
Well, that's what people are saying.
Why would I encourage people not to go then?
To J6? I thought, okay, well, you were totally out of the Proud Boys. Gavin, I was my tongue was in my cheek when I was saying that.
No,
first
I
off.
got it.
But secondly, I didn't know that you dissuaded people from going to J6. But
I begged Proud
Fair
Boys
enough.
not to go. I said it was a hoax. I thought my rationale wasn't exactly on the money. I said, you went there in November, you were stabbed, and it said, Proud Boys go to DC, stabbing ensues. You went there in December, you were stabbed. It said Proud Boys go to DC, stabbing ensues. I go, you're going to get shot, and the narrative is going to be Proud Boys go to DC, shooting ensues. Now, I was wrong about a shooting, but I was right that it was a trap. And I've never been a rally guy. That always bothered me about Enrique, constantly having a rally. And they went to a thing in, I think it was November. They were beating up Antifa. They were protecting like some black lady with a MAGA hat. It was great PR. It looked very good in the media. And I'm like, okay, if I was your publicist, I'd say that looked good in the newspapers. Stop. You did it. It's good. Tied up in a bow. But
okay, Gavin, but you went on Joe Rogan and you said if there's someone who looks like a leftist, punch them in the face or something to that effect. I mean, I've seen those clips. Yeah,
let's hear the context, though. Antifa would come up to us and they'd be like, and not me, like a well-known guy, but someone like my buddy.
I've heard of Antifa, that they're kind of bad folks. I've heard about it. Yeah.
Right. Well, that's who I was talking about.
Yeah.
And they come up and they go, hi, just like you, right? You're doing that interview and someone comes up to you. They don't want to discuss things or interrupt you. They want to punch you in the face and run away. So what I was saying was, if you're at a rally and some Antifa-like person comes up and wants to chat, they're not there to chat. The best offense is a good defense. So the best defensive thing to do would be to punch them in the face. I was obviously not saying go punch fucking liberals in the face. That's juvenile.
Okay. I'll okay. That's fair enough.
Which will show you.
That's fair enough. But
I was for saying
you're falling, Gavin.
The environment of the Proud Boys, this is still true. But back then it's on. I mean, the whole club was formed to fight back against all this Antifa violence. So when I say, punch people, I'm talking about when someone is literally spitting in your face.
I get it. And look, that was the environment back in the day. But the real issue with Charlottesville, I don't want to call Charlottesville a hoax. I also don't want to call J6 a hoax. I don't think any of these. I think that's a misrepresentation of both events, and it's self-serving for people to say, "Oh, I have no agency, I have no responsibility. I was trapped by evil people." That being said, the issue with Charlottesville was not that there was one guy who was giving information to the SPLC. Don't get me wrong. I want to figure out who that guy or girl is. But the issue really was incompetence bordering on maliciousness that was documented in the Heathy report a year or two later. They were literally not using the same signal to communicate between state and local police. They were pushing people after they declared a state of emergency. They funneled everyone onto Market Street, or I'm forgetting the name of the street, though I went to UVA, but they funneled everyone onto the same street. They created madness and mayhem. And they're there to protect you. They're there to maintain law and order. And thus I do hold them responsible for the chaotic violence, I want to, and that's the issue. But again, conservatives are not going to talk about that. What they're going to talk about is that anyone who is not them is an SPLC fed plant or whatever.
Yes.
I don't like what is it called? Patriot Front. I'm not a fan. But they're not feds. At the very least, they have not been proven to be feds. They just simply haven't. And you can't prove a negative. So they cannot prove to me that they are not feds, of course. So I just take it as it is. I can criticize them in an above board way. Conservatives get off. They've been getting off for years on just declaring that they're feds. The liberals fund them so that they make us look bad and blah, blah, blah. They just will do this endlessly. And so what happens with these things is we learn new information. And I hope that we'll learn important information with this case. And you wake up a year later and somehow we're dumber. Like we have a worse conception of the event. We're not able to criticize it productively, precisely because conservatives are retards. And like, if anything is a hoax, I'm sorry. It's mainstream conservatism that gets funded by billionaires, in some cases foreign actors who are really up to no good, who are putting forth their puppets onto debate stages and conference stages and getting their podcasts produced, etc. Like, they are so heavily funded that to compare like some bad actor who got $250,000 to like the conservative movement infrastructure, it is to compare a T-ball team to the New York Yankees. There's just no comparison. Now, it's ridiculous to even make the suggestion that all the dissident sphere, the alternative right, they're all paid, they're evil paid actors, but our guys are good. Glenn Beck is saying this, Matt Walsh is saying this. These are people who are funded by billionaires.
I was going to say,
it's even total bullshit.
Even Mike Lee, we've got this tweet here from based Mike Lee, SPLC in action, shameless bastards, with this video of Patriot Front. Now, I want to kind of back up here because Richard made a point here about the Heffy report. We put that up on the screen. You can, of course, find this. This was produced by a firm called Hunton and Williams. This was the final report, the independent review of the 2017 protest events in Charlottesville, Virginia. And the conclusion of this report is that the state police, the Virginia State Police and the local police are at fault for the violence that took place. Now, just before you were coming up, Richard, I was kind of giving some never before heard behind the scenes stuff where a month before Charlottesville, I went down and I met Jason Kessler, talked with him about whatever the rally was supposed to be, tried to get a vibe for it. I was in the process of doing a big story on it for the radio station that I worked at the time, WHLM Radio in Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania. And the following day, there was this KKK rally that was set to take place in Charlottesville. Jason gave me his phone, and I went and I filmed it because I wanted to see what is the dynamic going to be here? What is the opposition looking like? Are we in for a riot when we go to protest for the removal of these statues? What exactly is going to happen here? And as I was there, I saw with my own eyes the police escort the KKK in a motorcade into the police station. They park their cars in the police station. They get out of the cars, and then they come out the front door of the police station to an area that was designated for them to protest in. There was a barricade between the Klan and Antifa, and there were police officers manning the barricade, keeping the right and the left separated. There was no violence at that rally except for Antifa, which wound up getting tear gassed by the police because they started beating up the police and stuff like this. But the Klan were escorted in. They did their thing for 30 minutes or whatever it was. They were escorted back out and then given a police motorcade out of the city. That's what I thought was going to happen at Charlottesville, but that's not what happened at Charlottesville. As we were, walking up to the park, Virginia State Police on either side of the park were standing down. They were not engaging. They were not putting themselves between the different protest elements. In fact, they put a barricade in the park that ran north-south, bisecting the park. So depending on which entrance you went in, you couldn't get out the other side. You'd have to go down the steps and then through this, I don't even know how to put it. It was like, when you see that clip from Game of Thrones where the queen is being led through the city and everybody is throwing tomatoes and shit at them, that's exactly what it was like. You had to walk through this trench with Antifa throwing piss, shit, and like Gatorade bottles filled with concrete at people as they were trying to maneuver their way through the park. And it was only after, I guess it was Matt Heimbach's crew, what was that? The National Workers whatever the fuck. I can't keep track of this shit. But they all came in with Nazi flags, flipped the barricades that were bisecting the park, and then the police declared it this emergency situation, and then the Virginia State Police finally came into play. They pulled out their riot shields and pushed the alt-right into the left. And that's where we started seeing people shooting guns. There were flamethrowers. It was mass pandemonium.
It was a total mayhem, but it was not pre-planned mayhem. Like, it wasn't like there was anyone who was thinking in a premeditated fashion, thinking, "Oh, we're going to go kill us some leftists, some commie scum, or whatever." That wasn't what happened. Chaos was at the very best. Chaos was not put down swiftly enough by the police, and at the very worst, they facilitated chaos. I can remember after, when I was on, I guess it's Lee Park, and we were refusing to leave, about a dozen of us, because we had done nothing wrong. We were there to speak, exercise the First Amendment, etc. And these riot police pushed us off the field, and they also sprayed me in the face with bear spray. But so I was discombobulated, to say the least. And I remember going down with someone who was with me down to the state police, and I was like, "Look, I'm worse for wear. I don't know what to do." And I was like, "Look, I'm just going to be honest. Like, I'm a big target here," and I was at that moment. And they said, "Oh yeah, come here. We can help you." And I was like, "Oh, good. So I'll get some good treatment here." And they said, "Oh, here you go." And they showed me Market Street that was like a war zone, basically. They're like, "You can walk down there." I mean, I just, the police were so incompetent and possibly malicious that it's just at this point where it's like, I don't know. I was disillusioned even with police being like good guys or something. I think they're dumb and or evil. And in this case, so they're just following orders, as the line goes. It was a terrible situation. But again, the notion of it, whenever they mention Charlottesville, it's like they killed 3 people or something. And, as if it was like a reenactment of that movie with the bonfire where they like burned the what is that
Man?
The Wicker Man, as if it were like a Wicker Man revival and we like burned someone alive. The reality is that 2 police officers unfortunately died due to their own incompetence, I am sad to say. There was a helicopter crash. And the second thing that gets lost in all this is that the death of Heather Heyer and the injuries to the people in her environment happened after the state of emergency was declared and everyone was told to disperse. So it was not planned. It was not the intent of the rally. It all happened after the police cracked down and did martial law. And again, all of these realities are lost when you start going into these conspiracy theories about, they're all working for the SPLC. Nick Fuentes is working for the SPLC. Richard Spencer must have been a deep state operative or whatever. All of this bullshit just allows conservatives to not understand anything and to basically treat themselves as like the good guys. We're the ones. Everyone who's not us is like a bad actor being paid by some foreign entity or whatever. It's just, it's total bullshit.
Right. It's naive to say Charlottesville was a complete myth. They say that about Proud Boys. They go, it's 100% feds, just like kidnapping Governor Whitmer. It's 80% feds. And I think a rational person understands that the SPLC was paying people to have shit pop off because they make money from pictures. That lynched black guy, Michael Donald, probably made them $50 million. That was a great picture for them. The tiki torches probably made them $80 million. That was a fantastic picture for them. I don't think they attack people like Anthony Cumia or Nick Fuentes as much because it's a guy sitting at a desk. They need a photograph like that. They need tiki torches. They need dead bodies. They need fists. Like when Proud Boys were fighting Antifa by the Metropolitan Club, they got photographs. That makes the money. So I think a rational conservative goes, I don't think that Charlottesville was fake. I don't think that J6 was fake, but I do think that people have been paid to have shit pop off so they can get photos to sell. And I do think this goes all the way to the top, where police were told, do the barriers like this. Don't shuttle away Richard Spencer. Make sure he goes through the mob. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. There can be nuance. And the beauty of riots is it doesn't take a lot for it to pop off. You just need one or two bad actors to shove someone, punch a cop in the face, light off a firework, and now we have hysteria. And the SPLC gets their photographs.
Now, Ken, I want to bring you into this a little bit. On our Twitter space last night, I kind of mentioned this in passing, but this goes way back before the indictment with the SPLC. One of the people that was kind of in this mix was a guy by the name of Gary Thomas Rao. I couldn't remember his name last night. But this is him. Let's see. I can play. This is a minute-long clip. Let me play it real quick. This is him testifying at the church committee hearings. Let's see.
What happened
In connection
to his
with the
face?
Freedom Riders incident that you mentioned, did you inform the FBI about planned violence prior to that incident?
Sir, I gave the FBI information pertaining to the Freedom Riders assault approximately 3 weeks before it occurred.
And what did you tell them?
I stated to him that I had been contacted by a Birmingham city detective who in turn wanted me to meet with a high-ranking officer of the Birmingham Police Department to set a reception for the Freedom Riders.
You mean the Birmingham policeman set up the beating of the Freedom Riders and you told the FBI that?
That's correct, sir.
And then were they beaten?
They were beaten very badly, yes.
And did the Birmingham police give you the time that they promised to give you to perform the beating?
Yes, sir. We were promised 15 minutes with absolutely no intervention from any police officer whatsoever. The information was passed on to the Bureau. We had our 15 minutes. Approximately 15 minutes after the Freedom Riders were attacked, a police officer ran over to me and stated, God damn it, get out of here, get them out of here. Your 15 minutes are up, we're sending the crew in.
So, I mean, I don't think a lot of people know about this, but he was a paid informant by the FBI that was, their plan was to create violence between the Freedom Riders, which was a group of civil rights activists that would sit on buses or whatever, and the Klan. They wanted this to pop off. It's very similar with what happened to Charlottesville. Ken, can you give us some more color on the FBI's tactics and how this has happened throughout time?
Yeah, and the clip you just shared was actually from the church committee. That's where he's testifying about all that kind of undercover provocateurs.
Democracynow.org.
There's actually a reference to this in the SPLC indictment. There's a, quote, F unknown, who is the imperial wizard of the United Klans of America. And then the indictment references that this is the same group that back in the 60s was responsible for the bombing of a street church, which resulted in the death of 4 little girls, 1963. Well, Roe was involved in that bombing. There's a book called The Informant, which is kind of a biography about him. And when his buddies got busted and this later all came to light, he denied involvement, but I've actually got the exact quote from the book here. It says, his recollection was false. In fact, the evidence reveals that Roe, whether consciously or inadvertently, steered the FBI away from the real culprits, had difficulty explaining his own whereabouts the night the bomb was placed, and was unable to correctly identify the men who were eventually convicted. Another thing about Roe is that he was directly involved in the murder of a civil rights protester. Basically, they had, a big march, and this white lady was driving back to Michigan with a couple black guys, and Roe was in the car with 3 other Klansmen, and they did a drive-by shooting and killed the white lady. And then the very next morning, Roe calls the FBI and implicates his friends, and they get convictions, but there's serious questions about whether Roe was involved. He might have even pulled the trigger. And the cover-up actually went all the way to J. Edgar Hoover, because Hoover called Roe at one point and thanked him for helping him solve the case. And then when people started asking questions about, well, hey, what was an FBI informant doing in the car? It was actually Hoover who protected him. And again, this is a book called The Informant. The author is Gary May, if anybody's kind of interested in it.
Well, Ken, could I ask a question? How much of this is the racist FBI trying to crack down on leftists, and how much of this is trying to create a scene for some, ulterior objective? I mean, isn't the former more likely than the latter?
Trying to crack down on leftists?
Well,
that was happening with
we
COINTELPRO.
seem to have this assumption, like David, you seem to have this assumption that they're trying to create chaos in order for some, bigger ulterior objective to be accomplished. But I mean, how much of this is just the FBI being racist? Isn't that sort of the simpler
just be bad
explanation?
incentives in the bureaucracy. With Roe, he was placed in the Klan and not much was happening. And I guess, during COINTELPRO, Klan was one of the main targets. And they really wanted to roll up the whole nationwide group. But Roe wasn't able to get heavily infiltrated because at the time there was a restriction on informants participating in violence. And then at some point they lifted that restriction and told Gary, hey, the gloves are off. Do whatever you have to do to get close to the leadership. And that's when he started, doing all this nefarious activity. Whether there's some grander conspiracy or not, I don't know. But the facts are what the facts are, that the FBI did kind of subsidize this violence. So I don't know if intention really matters.
There was definitely, we did a podcast on this last week or 2 weeks ago with Justin Stam. We talked about this a little bit, but COINTELPRO was run by a guy named Wild Bill Sullivan. He wound up actually getting murdered by the son of a state police trooper just prior to the church committee hearings where he was going to testify. But this guy, William Sullivan, was a staunch, he was a Democrat, he was a Catholic, and he was a staunch anti-communist. And he was willing to use COINTELPRO. That was his program. That was his baby. And it seemed like he was willing to use that to go after what was called the New Left at the time, basically by any means necessary. So that's just a little bit of color on the main player there, whether or not that was.
Yeah,
just
I never
the
thought of
FBI
that
being
before.
racist.
They switched. The original COINTELPRO was against destroying Marxists like the American Indian movement and the Black Panthers. And then you cut to, the past few years in Berkeley, you had the exact same situation you guys are talking about in other cities where the police are working with Yvette Falarca, who is in bed with Antifa, obviously, and she's in bed with the mayor. They share Facebook posts, and Proud Boys go to jail immediately, whereas Antifa get these magical lawyers in Berkeley. And I remember a video where someone was interrogating the police, and they go, "Why aren't you doing anything?" It was some Antifa riot at the time. And they go, "Take it up with my boss." And they soon after had, mass quitting at the Berkeley police. When the Milo thing popped off at Berkeley, there was no police presence whatsoever. So somewhere along the line, they went from destroying Marxists to seeing them as useful idiots.
Well, Ken, was this a switch between COINTELPRO and PatCon? Can you tell us a little bit about PatCon and its origins and what it was designed to do?
PatCon stemmed from the 1980s bank robbery group called the Order, which was legitimate right terrorism. They robbed over $3.5 million from armored cars and banks. And they actually assassinated a Jewish radio host.
Oh, yeah.
Alan
Berg, yeah.
And basically, to Richard's point, is was it an intentional provocation, PatCon? You could argue that because they went after the Order, they built up this giant counterterrorism apparatus that has an expertise in hunting right wingers. And so now they have to use it. But there wasn't much action. So again, PatCon starts in 1991, and you have FBI informants going around trying to restart some version of the Order. And like I was telling you before, Richard and Gavin were on, there was literally an FBI front group called the Veterans Aryan Movement that was purporting to be bank robbers, and they were spreading around cash. And if you look at like the statistics of the Aryan Nations chapters, they were down to like 2 states at the time. And then by like 95, they're back in like 48 states. And really this PatCon program revitalized it. Again, it's unclear whether that was like some top-down intentional setup or it was just like perverse incentives resulting in this. But you know, those are just the basic facts.
I gotta give another example of that. I know you guys are dying for the Canadian angle on this. I'm here to supply it. So when I was a kid, a teenager in Ottawa and Montreal, Nazi skinheads were everywhere. And I don't mean like jerks. I mean like swastika. I mean back piece tattoos of Klansmen. I mean they went in and out of jail.
Are you describing your own rock band, Gavin?
No, they would beat the shit out of us. Anal Chinook.
Oh, okay.
We're constantly attacked by the Nazi skinheads. They took my boots. You weren't allowed to have Dr. Martens. This is like
they took them. They're like, wow, these are awesome boots. These are super Nazi. Let's take them from Gavin.
They took our gear so they could wear it.
Right, exactly.
But and I'm talking the guy with the Klansman tattoo on his back. His name was Francois. This is a French Canadian. What the fuck does he know about the South? And it was the government was they got a bunch of money to fight Nazism in the early 80s. There was a guy named David Bristow who worked for CSIS, which is Canada's CIA. Yes. And the Heritage Front had all this money, but they didn't have any Nazis. So they started putting out all these pamphlets like, don't you think it's weird the Jews run the banks and the media and you should fight for your race? And eventually these kids who were Canadian, there was no, like Canada's much more white in 85 than it is right now. This is pre, Pierre Trudeau, Justin Trudeau's dad, just flooding the whole country with Somalians and Indians. So they would go attack a Turkish guy or someone whose dad might have been Jewish. And they created a whole Nazi scene because it paid the bills. Thank God for a bunch of fucking goofs from Toronto who got in a bus and went and beat the shit out of them and solved the problem. But when I was 16, Nazi skinheads were absolutely everywhere. And it was completely created by the Canadian government to fight hate.
Unbelievable.
Very interesting. Just for in terms of left-wing terror, I mean, it's not a conspiracy theory that the Soviet Union was funding the Red Army faction in Germany, which was engaged in absolute terrorism and death and destruction. And it's interesting, even Vladimir Putin, when he was stationed in Dresden late into the Soviet Union, he actually had direct communications with remnants of the Red Army faction through the 80s. He also had communications with neo-Nazis. So the ability of foreign powers or, the government to use agent provocateurs in this way just shouldn't be underestimated.
Well, and this kind of ties in. I was going to kind of get into this. I didn't know how much time all of my fine guests here have. I don't want to take all of your afternoons or anything like that, but there is a lot of this stuff that winds up then plugging in here in North Idaho, and so I know people get on me. You focus too much on local stuff, but I think it is kind of indicative.
You do focus too much on local stuff.
I do, and it's okay. But I wrote this article. It's on my X account.
We could be talking about like Chinese policy, and you're like, in Coeur d'Alene.
Where is Northern Idaho? Does it even exist?
Well, we are on the hate map. We have several hate groups in the area. It says
is it the same as Idaho?
Yes, we are in Idaho, Northern Idaho. I feel like
Ohio. Is there a difference between Idaho and Ohio?
Yes, one is
Ohio's horrible. Idaho's beautiful. Actually, I have to say, Idaho is a beautiful state. I
was going to move to Coeur d'Alene. I hear it's a good baseball town for kids.
It is. As a matter of fact, I can get you hooked up with your old debate adversary, Vince James, who is a big time.
Oh, he's the one who told me, actually.
He's a big baseball head, man. He's into it. He could take you around and show you the ropes. But what I did want to point out is that there is a lot of really bizarre intersections here in Coeur d'Alene between the Southern Poverty Law Center, the Mossad, the Anti-Defamation League, this group called the Kootenai County Task Force on Human Relations. But there was all kinds of stuff that was popping off up here. Where I had another tweet with a thread that I wanted to go over. Come on, where are you? Where are you? Here it is. And so this was a couple of years ago. Coeur d'Alene tried to put a draconian new hate crime ordinance into place. And, little do people know that the city councilwoman that proposed this and was trying to get it passed is Christy Wood. Christy Wood was the head of the Kootenai County Task Force on Human Relations that worked closely with the Southern Poverty Law Center here in North Idaho to bankrupt the Aryan nations. Just a couple of years ago, back in 2024, they actually created a hate crime incident in Coeur d'Alene where supposedly a white guy driving a truck with a Confederate flag shouted the N-word at a bunch of basketball players that were in town. Turns out the entire thing was a lie. It was totally fake. There was no white truck. There was no Confederate flag.
He just wanted to play basketball. I mean, he heard them using the soft A, and he was like, "Hey, yo, brothers, let me."
Well, he was
trying to be down. Yeah,
he was hitting on a girl.
I could be your, 5'9" white point guard, and like, just let me play.
The word "what's up"?
Well, Casey, the truth is that he was trying to hit on a girl. Is that? It was.
Wow, this goes it's even deeper.
These kids were driving down Sherman Avenue, and this kid yelled out the window. I won't say exactly what he said, but he said, "I know you're an N-word, but I'd still F you in the butt," is what he said. So the prosecutor couldn't charge him because
that's how I met your mom.
But there was also this long history here in Coeur d'Alene between these groups, the Human Rights Education Institute, the Task Force on Human Relations. They've been illegally occupying city property for over a decade. They have all kinds of ties with the former city attorney. They were all in bed with the Southern Poverty Law Center. This is all kind of deep lore up here. They reported me to the FBI for leading a rosary rally, which was in protest of Pride in the Park that we had up here. That's, of course, where Patriot Front famously showed up and then was immediately arrested. This is some of that. But this is where Rachel Dolezal got her start. Rachel Dolezal got her start working at this group called the Human Rights Education Institute, where she would go around. She hung a noose in her own backyard.
she was the director.
She was the director of this group, and she would put swastika stickers on businesses. The businesses would then report a hate crime. Then people would donate to the HREI and the Southern Poverty Law Center. There's an uptick in violence and all of this. And this has been going on up here for years. As a matter of fact, the Kootenai County Task Force on Human Relations was initially headed by a Catholic priest named Bill Wasmuth. This is him right here, back in 1986. He actually left the priesthood. He left the priesthood with a 17-year-old girl, ran to Seattle, ditched her for a 16-year-old. It's a whole mess.
Are you getting paid to promote Coeur d'Alene?
Yes, I am. But you can even see here, this is the articles.
The shocking thing is that he wasn't a homosexual. I mean, that's
actually, that's true. That's true. But these are the
Catholic Church was actually very excited to find out that teenage girl.
There was an issue last month in the Diocese of Boise, or a couple months ago. A priest that they brought up from like Trinidad wound up sleeping with a 17-year-old, and I was like, oh, thank God he wasn't gay. That's how low the bar is.
Hey, I'm sorry to interrupt. I got to get going soon.
No, it's okay. Give us your closing thoughts.
But I want to hear your closing thoughts. What is the verdict on Patriot Front? I'm 50-50, real or feds.
I think that Patriot Front are real people. I am inclined to believe. I mean, we did an interview on this podcast with Thomas Rousseau several months ago. He strikes me as a genuine guy. Are there feds and these types of operatives, whether they're ADL or Southern Poverty Law Center, they're clearly out here paying people to join extremist groups and push them to be more extreme. The idea that there wouldn't be somebody in Patriot Front that's getting paid like this, I find that hard to believe.
I agree with that assessment. I don't think they're feds. At the very least, I've seen no evidence of that, and people just assert it with certainty. And they're probably exactly as you described them. It doesn't mean that it's a good idea or that I'm in support of them, but I don't want to just accuse them of being agents and so on. I think the right can make the right look bad well enough. They don't need Patriot Front. Patriot Front makes them look good, if anything. So
what do you mean they're not fat?
My next question is Jason Kessler. Do we think he's any of the F's in this indictment?
Well, that's an interesting question. I don't want to. I'm very hopeful that we're going to see discovery with this. What is the Southern Poverty Law Center going to do? They've been indicted. They basically can either just take it on the chin, and what does that subject them to? Basically being dismantled by the government, fines, jail time potentially, or are they, it's a group full of lawyers. Are they going to fight this thing? And so if they fight it, it goes to trial. There will be discovery. We will hopefully find out who these Fs are.
But they do the Soros thing with the various LLCs, so discovery isn't necessarily going to be a Venmo to a guy. It's going to be they donate to a group, and then that group donates to that group, and blah blah blah. It might have so many shells that we there's no obvious paper trail.
Yeah. The other question of that I have, and I don't have an answer for this. Maybe Ken would have some sort of an answer or an idea. Is where did this investigation actually start? Did this come from the banks? Did the banks actually trigger this? Or was this like Jack Posobiec's crew basically rolling out some red meat as the Iran war becomes more and more unpopular, as Donald Trump's approval rating continues to sink? It's now in like the low 30s. It's about the same as Jimmy Carter towards the end of his administration, which is not good. Are they throwing out red meat to try to get the disaffected alt-right to kind of start cheerleading for MAGA again?
Maybe that's why they announced it now, but these things take a lot of time. Like you can't do an indictment like this in 6 months. They've been working on this for a while, and I bet the SPLC was in their sights. And there's probably, if you go look up SPLC Project 2025, I bet you can find something. Like the conservatives might have endorsed the SPLC in 2016, ironically, where they're like, oh yeah, we're not racist, oh, blah, blah, blah. But as time went on, conservatives were very angry at the SPLC because they were being targeted by them and attacked. Like pro-lifers were being attacked. Average conservatives were being attacked by the SPLC. Through words.
Well, not even just through words. Remember, there was a group called, was it the Family Research Council? And the Southern Poverty Law Center published an article about them, and a crazed guy with a shotgun showed up at their headquarters and attempted to take out as many of them as possible. That led to a giant lawsuit and then a settlement. But the SPLC has...
A black security guard. The black security guard was killed. And that guy, by the way, who did the shooting, he blames the SPLC for getting into his stupid, crazy head.
Jeez. Unbelievable. But Gavin...
And remember, the SPLC attacked Turning Point USA, Moms for Liberty, groups like that who are directly in kind of the GOP Trump patronage network. So it's really not a surprise that they're getting this backlash now. They're not just going after like fringe groups anymore. They're actually attacking the GOP apparatus. So it kind of...
guys, I got to go. It was a pleasure. Nice seeing you again, Richard.
Nice to talk. This is the first time,
Gavin.
This is the first time that we've ever met, too.
Kidnap a governor or blow up a building, I can help you. DM me. I promise you.
Oh, good. Yeah. Well, there's another MILF governor in the Midwest. We don't want to kill her. We just want to talk to her.
Just kidnap her until she gets Stockholm syndrome.
Thank you so much for joining us, Gavin. That's awesome. Thank you.
I'm going to take off as well.
Yeah,
David.
Richard.
I need to do.
Any closing thoughts?
I've said my piece actually.
All right. Well, very good.
I'll talk to you soon, man. Thank you.
Thank you. No, thank you for joining us.
Good to see you, Ken.
Likewise. Good to meet you.
Bye.
Very good. All right, let's pin Ken back to the. Okay, there we go. We're back to normal. That was crazy, man. That was the most guests we've ever had on at one time. I think we did a pretty good job of juggling. But Ken, do you think there's going to be any more indictments like this coming down, perhaps against the Anti-Defamation League, which I believe has engaged in some similar activities?
I doubt it. Kash Patel claimed that the FBI cut ties with the ADL last year, around the same time that he cut ties with the SPLC. But then we found out in October that the ADL was still briefing the FBI on kind of left-wing Antifa-style terrorist groups. This was the case of, it was called the Turtle Island Liberation Front. They announced it in early November. It was like these guys, it was like 3 guys and 3 FBI informants and an undercover agent. They were supposedly going to set off bombs on New Year's night. And they all got arrested. But then Jonathan Greenblatt came out a couple weeks later. He's speaking to his donors and he's talking about how the ADL identified some of these Turtle Island group members and briefed the FBI on the case, which kind of proved that Kash Patel was lying about cutting ties. And just remember, the ADL's relationship with the FBI runs actually much deeper than the SPLC's. It goes back to the Hoover era. And so, and considering how friendly the administration is with Israel, I don't see any action coming down on that front, which is too bad because the SPLC is just the tip of the iceberg.
Yes, there's actually a video here. If you don't have to get out of here immediately, we can play this clip real quick. This, I believe, was I can't remember who this guy was. I think he was with the Institute for Historical Review, but this is a very famous clip that made the rounds on the internet a couple of years ago. We'll give it a play right now.
Applied for a permit to lead a march of Nazis through downtown Philadelphia. Now, eventually, some enterprising reporters did an investigation. You know what they turned up? James Gutman was none other than Mordecai Levy, who worked with the Anti-Defamation League and later split off that to form the terrorist Jewish Defense League. This was an operation that was run by the ADL. They wanted to have a Nazi march in Philadelphia. Why? Because how can they raise money to justify their existence if American Jews don't think there's a lot of anti-Semitism? So what better thing to do than to slap swastikas on a couple of people, lead them on a march through town, and then the next day the ADL comes marching in and says, look, there are Nazis on the streets, you need to give us money so we can protect you. And then on top of that, have a tax-exempt status. This was not a one-time operation. A similar thing happened in Trenton, New Jersey. A man named James Rosenberg, also on the payroll of the fact-finding division of the Anti-Defamation League. Under the name Jimmy Mitchell, he worked to convince a small group of people who called themselves Klansmen. He convinced them to go into Trenton and blow up the New Jersey headquarters of the NAACP. And this was also exposed. There's a long history.
So there's the clip. It's pretty unbelievable, but it's true. And I've got in this thread some more of these links. So just to back up a second, and not to, again, we're very kind of far from the indictment, but I think it's important to get this information out. This character, Mordecai Levy, that was going under the name James Gutman to make these Klan rallies in Philadelphia happen. Mordecai Levy was active here in North Idaho, okay? He was one of the members, the founding member of the JDO, the Jewish Defense Organization, which was a terrorist group. Even the ADL called them a terrorist group. And I have here a newspaper clipping from the Spokesman Review Okay, so this is in the wake of the order, in the wake of the craziness that had happened here in North Idaho in 1984. Like I said, with the order investigations, there were, of course, ties to Medellin Falls. There were ties to the Aryan nations. In 1986, they tried the Order 2, right? This was like a revival group run by, what was her name? Son of a bitch. I don't remember their names. I've got all of it in the clipping. I need to write a book about this at some point. But somebody blows up this priest that we talked about earlier, Bill Wasmuth. Somebody planted a pipe bomb outside of his house. He wasn't hurt. Nobody got hurt in it. But there was this article published several days after the blast titled, "Blast Doesn't Weaken Belief in Strength of Nonviolence," right? But here, in the article, you see, Jewish Defense Organization leader Mordecai Levy contacted Wasmuth on Wednesday from New York to offer protection and believes that the bombing must be avenged with weapons. Wasmuth prefers words. So, you get this priest, he gets blown up, and then all of a sudden a terrorist gets his phone number and then offers to give him guns to go out. And there are other clippings that I have. Here's another one. This is from the Spokane Chronicle. Militant Jew advises priest to, quote, get a gun. Levy continued saying his organization is offering a $1,000 reward for anybody who shoots any Nazi in defense of the community. So this was happening in Idaho, where they were literally putting out hits in the newspaper offering $1,000 for people to go and kill Nazis. And of course, we know now that a Nazi, you call someone a Nazi to basically give the stamp of approval of you can kill them. They're not a human, right? We've seen this, with the Charlie Kirk stuff. You get called a Nazi to dehumanize and to make it okay to by any means necessary, do whatever you want. And it's just amazing to me. This guy, Mordecai Levy, eventually was arrested in the East Village after he opened fire on a rival gang with an automatic weapon on the roof of his apartment. It's just crazy. And it's now the women that were involved in all of this, the Human Rights Education Institute, the Task Force on Human Relations, the daughter of the FBI agent, Krista Hazel, she's now running for office here in Coeur d'Alene. She's running to be our state representative in Legislative District 3, which is just absolutely insane. And it's if you go to these people in Coeur d'Alene, they really believe that there was some sort of Nazi threat here in North Idaho. But we have confirmed proof now that the Aryan nations themselves were funded by the Southern Poverty Law Center, at least in its later years. This is the 1990s on. I think that there is something to be said for the early days. The 1974, there was a group called the Posse Comitatus that was formed. In a similar way, it's there are conservatives out there that will pretend like it wasn't a real thing, that they were all just feds, but they weren't. For example, the Posse Comitatus formed here in 1974. There was something called the Expo in Spokane, which was kind of like a continuation of the World's Fairs. And a lot of people in the community here in Kootenai County thought that fair was going to bring a lot of violence and a lot of lawlessness to the region. So they created this posse, a sheriff's posse, that would provide security and crack down on any ne'er-do-wells that would come to the area. That is eventually what grew into the Aryan nations, which, like I said, may have been a CIA front. But there was also this battle happening in Coeur d'Alene at the time between the lumber unions, the mining unions, and the people that wanted to turn this place into a tourist trap. The resort people and the FDA and the EPA, right? They wanted to shut down the mines. They wanted to shut down the lumber mills because it was polluting the environment. So Richard Butler was kind of the champion for the working man, while the FBI and these resort people were I think the Order 2 stuff that happened, the bombing in 1986 of the priest, I think all of that was fake. I think all of that came from the SPLC and the ADL getting one of their informants to plant a bomb. I don't think that was organic in any way. And I think from that point on, the late 80s and especially the 90s, everything after Ruby Ridge, I think that was all fake and basically paid for by the Southern Poverty Law Center. I mean, it's just unbelievable. Ken, any more color, I guess, to add to this indictment, the whole topic? Do you have any kind of closing thoughts? Because we are going to dig a lot more with Casey, who's so graciously with us in the studio today. We're going to dig deeper into the connections between the Southern Poverty Law Center and some of these groups here in North Idaho. But Ken, do you have any closing thoughts for us?
About the indictment, I think we covered it pretty well. What you were just saying, I tend to agree that the Order 2 probably was astroturfed. It just, their tactics didn't make any sense. The Order didn't shit where they ate. Like they were nationwide robbing banks in other cities, but they weren't wreaking havoc in their own communities, which is what the Order 2 did. And the other thing you kind of reminded me of, and I don't want to open up a whole can of worms before we go, but when you talk about that Mordecai guy and the other ADL operative,
yes.
Again, I'm not speaking for the host here, but I can't help but to think of one Jake Lang.
Yes.
Who is this guy that people see going around the country. At one point, he's like humping a goat on camera, burning the Quran, really just bad optics for the right wing and kind of trying to provoke the left wingers. And he's also advocated violence. He's trying to get people to break out Tina Peters, who's in jail for her activities related to contesting the 2020 election. He's like advocating a prison break. And, you know, I don't have proof. It's just speculation. But I wonder if Jake Lang might be some sort of provocateur a la the people you were referencing.
Oh, no, I am in complete agreement. Go off, King. It's okay. Speak for the host. This guy glows. I mean, I would rather stare at the sun without glasses. You know, I don't know how to put it. My wit is not, I've been drinking this champagne, so I don't have a good comeback on this, but this guy is just, he glows like the sun. I mean, everything that he's done trying to get, he'll go out to these rallies and talk about, white Christian patriarchy male, we got to take back our country. And then he'll like Zig Heil and, give a salute. And it's like, you couldn't create the more perfect thing that the ADL and the SPLC and all of these anti-hate groups want. Like, he is with a bow on it. You know, I've been telling people for 6, 7, 8 months to stay away from this guy. Mm-hmm. Because it's like there is a natural reaction to what has been going on in this country. That natural reaction was evidenced at Charlottesville. I mean, all of these young kids that showed up at Charlottesville, they were there because their culture, their history was being erased right in front of their eyes. That was real. They were taking down the statues at Pepperdine University. They were taking down the statues in New Orleans, all across the country. And, one of the things that's coming up, Richard mentioned this, they're astroturfing this story into basically that the entire alt-right was an SPLC hoax. That wasn't real. Well, we actually know who this guy is. His name is Pete. I don't know how to say his last name, Pete. I'm sorry. I'm going to butcher it. Saitanovic, is that his name? But this kid, he showed up at the rally. He was genuinely, I think, concerned about the direction our country was headed. And in the wake of Charlottesville, he actually converted to Catholicism. And he's not the only one. There's a whole bunch of them. He actually responded to my tweet saying, can confirm, was not paid, also can confirm practicing Roman Catholic. There was a lot of these guys that I know personally that became Catholic after Charlottesville, because the critique is real. You know, the plutocracy, the kleptocracy, the concentration of corporate power, Jewish abuse of the goyim, let's say, you know, that's real. That's actually happening. And there are real reactions to it. And I think that there are, you know, good ways and bad ways to kind of combat this stuff. I think that, you know, grabbing a swastika flag and showing up at Charlottesville with like, this is not a proper way to protest or to make any kind of positive change in society. You're just going to run yourself into a brick wall, destroy your life, and cause chaos. But, you know, getting into the actual, you know, let's say social teaching of like the Catholic Church, rerum novarum, the old version of social justice, you know, the anti-capitalist critique of Pope Leo XIII. You know, things like there was an article published in La Civiltà Cattolica in 1889 called On the Jewish Question. And it's like it could have been written yesterday, about how things were going in Europe at the time, the concentration of power in the hands of the banking class. And so, you know, it's crazy, man. It's absolutely crazy. But yeah, Ken, any final thoughts? We're gonna dig real deep, I guess, on the local stuff here. We're gonna go over some of the stuff. But before we do that, do you have any closing thoughts?
Just to mention that there are actually still people being prosecuted for Charlottesville, including a guy named, I think, Augustus Invictus, and several others who are being prosecuted under like the KKK Act for arguing like their torch march was designed to intimidate. Pretty much the DA at the time declined to prosecute. Somebody ran specifically on a platform that they prosecute Charlottesville torch marchers, and now we've got guys fighting really dubious charges. So just wanted to mention that on my way out. I mean, I could probably talk to you all guys all day, all night long about this stuff. It's really fascinating. So hopefully we could do it again soon.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Ken. You know, it was great to finally talk with you in person. Your work is fantastic. Everybody, if you aren't already, please make sure that you are following Ken Silva over on Twitter. He is at JD Cashless, JD_cashless. He's the editor of Headlines USA. We can go here real quick. This is the website, Headline USA. You've done a tremendous amount of reporting. How many years have you been reporting on this stuff?
I've been a reporter for almost 15 years. I did mostly local news until 2021, did a brief stint at the Epic Times, and then I've been at Headline USA since 2023. So still surviving in this business, even though it can struggle at times.
Yeah, no, God bless. I mean, there's just so much of this is going to be like AI slop. There's going to become a premium for content that was written by humans, curated and researched by humans. These AIs hallucinate all the time. They get it wrong. You've got over 2,258 articles live right now over on Headline USA. Everything from January 6th, the pipe bombings, Patcon. It looks like you covered, was it Shiloh Hendricks, right? This is the woman.
She's actually going on trial in about a month or two.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually signed up to film her jury trial, so we're waiting to see if the judge will allow us to do that.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, go follow Ken. Make sure that you're following Headlines USA. A lot of great information. I've learned a lot. And of course, you know, on your Twitter, you've got right now a bunch of these types of documents from the FBI, the SPLC, talking about informants. There was this other one that I saw down here, a random email asking about the ADL, and holy crap, I forgot that there's also an FBI report saying the ADL and SPLC had undercovers embedded in these phony NSM rallies. And you tweeted this in 2024. So, you know, really good stuff. Oh, and of course, there's the swastika flag with the fresh creases in it. Where did, you know, this was like one of those things where it was like that day, I remember looking up and seeing the flag and I was just like, what the heck is going on? That thing just got shipped by Amazon. Who is this dude? And of course, we never got his name. We don't know where he appeared out of nothing. He disappeared back into nothingness. And God knows how much he was paid to go to this rally and do this. But anyway, Ken, thank you so much for joining us. God bless you and God bless your work.
All right, thanks again, guys. Take care.
Cheers.
Thanks, Ken.
Oh
Okay,
man,
bye.
what a show! And we're only halfway
An hour and a half
through
in, I
it.
think.
I know. That
was really interesting.
Let me just do this. Oh, I think it was. I think there's going to be a lot more coming out of this, and hopefully with the discovery, it'll be big. But before we go any further, we do have to give a shout out to our sponsors. Antelope Hill Publishing, they're fighting to keep history alive amidst a regime of anti-white censorship. They've got a whole host of books and a varied catalog that includes the newly updated and expanded third edition of Dr. Kevin MacDonald's Culture of Critique, the essential modern text on Jewish identity, Dr. Ricardo Duchesne's magnum opus, Greatness and Ruin, the definitive scholarly examination of European exceptionalism, as well as works by Kerry Bolton, Paul Kersey, and Josh Neal. Antelope Hill recently brought David Irving's iconic Nuremberg: The Last Battle back into print and have numerous translations of historical works from eras such as Fascist Italy, National Socialist Germany, and Civil War Spain, previously unavailable in English. There are also plenty of books on contemporary issues such as transgenderism, the opioid crisis, Christian nationalism, and much more, as well as history books, novels, and children's books. So whatever your interest is, you're bound to find books that you like at Antelope Hill, all with sleek, modern cover art. Help us and help our people by shopping with companies that share our values and fight for our cause. Visit antelopehillpublishing.com and use promo code Backlash10. You'll get 10% off your order. And because we are going to be talking about local stuff and how the SPLC and Anti-Defamation League ties into Coeur d'Alene, we got to promote a local company, North Idaho Tallow, at idahotallow.com. They make soap and skincare products without any bad chemicals in it. They're not made out of petroleum byproducts. They're not, they don't have any endocrine disruptors. This is the stuff that makes your, testicles shrivel up and your testosterone levels to drop. Little do we know that, showering with these BlackRock companies, Procter & Gamble soap, that's all made out of petroleum byproducts, and it messes with your estrogen, it messes with your testosterone. North Idaho Tallow Company doesn't do any of that. This is tallow, beeswax, and honey. Like, this is made out of natural ingredients, the way that your great-grandmother would have made soap, if she did make soap. I don't know. Hopefully she wasn't turned into a bar of soap. But you can, of course, visit idahotallow.com. All orders over $100 shipped for free, and I've just been, we've gotten lots of emails here of people that have tried the North Idaho tallow stuff that have had eczema and all kinds of problems, and they're like, this stuff is like magic. I don't have skin problems anymore. What about, you've tried this stuff?
I have, actually. I use this balm here, and it really helped with dry skin, and I highly recommend it. I use it every day, and it helped a lot with like I said, dry skin on my face and that sort of thing. So
nice.
I highly encourage people to use North Idaho Tallow.
Nice. Very good. And were you paid to say that?
No.
You were not paid to say that?
No.
You're just saying it because you're nice.
Yeah, it's a good product.
Okay, good. So visit idahotallow.com. Okay, now let's get into it. Casey, you've done a lot of investigative work up here, a lot of FOIA requests. What have you found insofar as this ecosystem of Southern Poverty Law Center cutouts and money laundering trails? What are we dealing with in North Idaho? Because it kind of feels like there's this cabal in downtown Coeur d'Alene that got their start, they got their rise to power by fighting the Aryan nations in the 1980s. And they're still in power today. I think that a lot of the hidden grammar of the issues at North Idaho College had to do with the people that were involved with these. Ken Howard, the lawyer who was on the board of directors of NIC, Ken Howard was the guy who let Morris Dees function through him, right? So, like, can you explain this? If you are in Idaho and you're at trial, but you want a lawyer that was from out of state, you have to have a local lawyer serve as the point man, right? That's on the case. And that person was Ken Howard in Coeur d'Alene for the Aryan Nations trial back in the late 1990s. Ken Howard then went on to be on the board of directors of North Idaho College. And, we now know that Morris Dees was a pedophile. He was doing goofy stuff with his niece or something like that. I'll get, Pete Dobroska brought the article up, but give us an overview of what you've found.
I mean, I would start for people that are in North Idaho. I think it's important to start at, in the early 80s and I'm glad that you moved here because, it seems like we worked organically to find a lot of what we found, but we did our own thing really independently. And then I think you would pick up on what I found or vice versa, but largely you would pick up on records requests I would find and you would, read the papers from back in the day. So I think like in the early 80s, it's really important to understand that there was a group of people that had an ad hoc group called the Coalition Against, there was a Citizens Coalition Against Malicious Harassment, which essentially consisted of the Kootenai County Task Force on Human Relations. And you had other groups that later joined like the ADL, the American Jewish Committee. So essentially this initial ad hoc group, which was not a nonprofit, it's ad hoc, and they had pushed the malicious harassment law. And I think that's important to understand because it kind of explains why that was enacted in the early 80s. And I think that was a way for these people to essentially, through the law, create a noose, so to speak, for them to attack their political adversaries, so to speak. And so in 1983, the Idaho Malicious Harassment Law is passed. And essentially what that says, Dave, is that if you, use some a derogatory term against someone's race, gender, religion, whatever, and then you commit an act, a crime against the person or their property, then you could be charged with a hate crime. And so I think it's important for us to start there because that explains where we are today with the malicious harassment law and Representative, for instance, Barbara Ehart trying to pass an anti-Semitism bill and amend Idaho's malicious harassment law. So now we can go after people who are being quote unquote anti-Semitic. Again, if you commit a crime against somebody's person or property and use a racial slur of some sort or some sort of derogatory term, then they can charge an additional charge, a hate crime. So I think that's important to understand because it explains why you saw in the mid 80s the KKK, Richard Butler and all that really ramp up. It was because it was a way for these nonprofits to work together. This Citizens Coalition Against Malicious Harassment is then created into a nonprofit in 1986 or 87 called the Northwest Coalition Against Malicious Harassment. And again, one of the instrumental people behind this movement was Jim Jones, former Idaho Attorney General and former Idaho Supreme Court Justice. And so he's a very important figurehead as far as this movement's concerned. So the Northwest Coalition Against Malicious Harassment is formed, and of that you have the Kootenai County Task Force on Human Relations. You have the, later on I'm sure like the Human Rights Education Institute, join that. You have, there's a list there. I have the whole list here too. But you see it consists of the 5 most northwestern states. And so this collective of nonprofits were working together, taking advantage of these incidents that were occurring in Idaho, applying for grants, I'm assuming. I mean, we know that today. I'm sure that was the same circumstance. It's all about generating money, and at the same time, it's defaming your political adversary. It's also steering the community. So we know a lot of these influential people in the community are on city council, they're former city police officers, they're lawyers, they're, you name it, they're part of the community. And so once these people get into positions of power, they all work together and then they steer the community to where they want it to be. And so now we're reaping the benefits of, I wouldn't say benefits, where we're reaping, the whirlwind, I guess you could say, as to where we are right now.
I don't know why this isn't working for me, but I was trying to, if you could pull up on your computer, we can put your computer on the screen.
What do you want?
Let's look at the steering committee thing, first of all, because there was a kind of a blow up at the Coeur d'Alene City Council last night. Where these old powers, represented by the Southern Poverty Law Center types, the old powers are at war with the new powers, The new powers being Candlelight Christian Fellowship and the Evangelical Christian Zionist faction here in North Idaho. They've been at war with one another over who the next police chief in Coeur d'Alene should be. The new people, the Zionists, want this guy Dave Hagar to be the police chief. He, of course, has cited Southern Poverty Law Center statistics and intelligence reports during the Patriot Front trial. So could you talk about that a little bit, actually?
Yeah, so a lot of the records requests I've done, for people that are not very familiar with records requests, I found a really cool technique in that. So what I started doing is I would take an email domain like the city of Coeur d'Alene, which is cdaid.org, and then I would just do like a one-sentence record request, and I would just do this all the time, and I would just change the keyword. So I would just say I want all emails to and from, including attachments, for whatever email domain, for keywords, whatever, and then you pick a date range. So if you have a really specific, unique keyword, you can have a longer date range. Anyways, I did that. I learned how to kind of get good at doing that, and so I would scrape these email domains, and I would get information. One of the things I got was in 2023, the North Idaho Pride Alliance, who hosts the Pride in the Park events every year, they had applied for a non-profit security grant through FEMA, asking for funds, essentially. And in that grant, which Captain Hagar was working with the North Idaho Pride Alliance with, essentially how to get funds. And in that, they mentioned the reasons that they should get the funds is because the prior year we had the arrest of the 31 members of Patriot Front, but they also mentioned you by name, Dave Reilly. They also mentioned the Idaho Tribune as reasons for them getting their security grant fund. So again, this is just more of a repetitive cycle, but to actually see this application and to see the language and the lingo, the Western State Centers mentioned in this too. So suffice to say, behind the scenes, by doing hundreds, thousands of records requests, you can start to see these data points emerge. And now with this SPLC lawsuit, I don't know how much more crystal clear it needs to be for people, but you can see there on that document there that it names the arrest of Patriot Front. At the bottom, it names you, Dave, in the Idaho Tribune. So that was a pretty big deal. So you were mentioning that you think like the AG or somebody needs to look into this at a state level.
I mean, it seems very clear to me that the Southern Poverty Law, they were operative here in North Idaho. Not only was the Southern Poverty Law Center operative in North Idaho insofar as they were trying to prosecute the Aryan nations and Richard Butler and all of this, we also know that they were in Idaho sending funds to people like Paul Mullet. Paul Mullet was this weird Nazi guy that was a leader in the Aryan nations. He was a former director of the Aryan nations. And so he was receiving funds from the Southern Poverty Law Center to then have rallies and actions here in Coeur d'Alene. So why is there no investigation into this? Because I think it's pretty obvious that these groups were funding one another. There was all kinds of money. And this goes to this article that I wrote on my X account. If you're on X, you should be able to access this thing. Where did it go? Where did it go? Where did it go? Come back. Come back.
I saw it earlier.
I did too. Well, here, let me just do it this way.
Yeah, it was a good article too.
Thank you. That's the only article that I've written on X. But this I did in 2024. Are Coeur d'Alene's woke human rights groups really a front for foreign intelligence? Because it does seem like that. Not only foreign intelligence, but like you have these weird intersections of like the head of the HREI at one point was this guy, Reese Johnson, right? And Reese Johnson was working in Israel, in Palestine, for a guy named Ayad el-Sarraj, who was this guy here on the left, who is now, of course, sitting here with Noam Chomsky, big Epstein guy, by the way, for those unaware. And so after working for Ayad el-Sarraj in Israel for the Palestinian side, allegedly, he was a pharmacist giving drugs to Palestinians, by the way. Some thought that perhaps he was actually an Israeli operative drugging Palestinians basically to make them nonviolent. Reese then comes into the community here as the director of the HREI. This is back in 2004. Of course, this is also after Reese Johnson spent time at Harvard's Center for Human Rights, which coincides with Jeffrey Epstein's tenure at Harvard, by the way.
Well, and we've read emails from Reese, and
they're kind of crazy.
Still don't know what to make of it. He's emailing. Can you think of some of the people he was emailing? So,
he was emailing the New York Times, the Foreign
UK
Relations
government,
the Keir Starmer, the people in Russia. He was claiming at one point, very recently, back in 2023, that he had actually been contracted by the Biden Department of Justice to run a sting operation on neo-Nazis in Spokane that had participated in January 6th. And that his assets had been frozen, his children had been taken away from him, and he was seeking restitution for his frozen assets or something like that. I mean, really crazy stuff. But at the
really
same
cryptic.
time, it was very cryptic. I didn't know what to make of it.
Yeah. Did you ever get a hold of him?
I never got a hold of the guy. I wanted to dig into this, but one of the other elements of this, just to again, to keep schizo posting here. The Human Rights Education Institute started with a $1 million donation from a guy named Greg Carr in 2002. Okay? Now, Greg Carr also helped underwrite the lawsuit against the Aryan nations. He paid the Southern Poverty Law Center, Morris Dees, to be the lawyer in this case. He also wound up buying the property from Victoria Keenan, which was there was this whole debacle basically where a bunch of Aryan Nations guys, I guess they tried to buy drugs or something, right? And then this woman, Vicky Keenan, and her son Jason, there's rumors that perhaps they sold bunk drugs. The Aryan Nations then opened fire on them. There was a whole lawsuit that came after the fact. It's all very hazy. I can't really talk about it too much because we'd probably get sued over it. But whatever they say that the main story was is definitely not true. Long story short, they wound up prosecuting Richard Butler for not doing due diligence on his security team or whatever. They sued him out of house and home. They took his property. Greg Carr bought it for $6 million from the Keenan family, and then they donated it to North Idaho College, of all places. Of course, you're starting to see.
And to branch into the North Idaho College, we have to, of course, talk about Tony Stewart, a political science professor, correct?
Yes.
Who had been there since the late 70s until 2007, I believe, almost 40 years.
Yes.
And the interesting thing that we really have to talk about is that he had a public access channel at North Idaho College for decades. And who were some of the guests on his show? And now Tony Stewart was also part of the Kootenai County Task Force on Human Rights, part of the Northwest Coalition Against Malicious Harassment, part of this collective. Then at the same time has his public access show at NIC, and some of the guests, Dave.
Well, some of the guests would have been Mark Potok, the head of the Southern Poverty Law Center's fact-finding division, Wayne McInnes, the FBI agent that was in charge of Ruby Ridge,
Morris Dees.
Leonard Zeskind, Morris Dees.
Leonard Zeskind was on?
I think he was, yeah. I mean, all of these, they were all in the same circles, and they did a lot of different panel discussions and whatnot. But yeah, there's also another weird connection to North Idaho College at the same time that Tony Stewart had been brought in to the college in the early 1970s. The college then brought in a consultant to help restructure the college. Do you know who the consultant was that they brought in?
You're going to tell us.
I'm going to tell you. It was none other than Donald Barr, bagpiping Bill Barr's dad, the OSS CIA agent who was affiliated with the mafia in New York City and who was the person who gave Jeffrey Epstein his first job at the Dalton School teaching math, okay? This is who was involved here in North Idaho at the time, okay? Here's the headline from the Coeur d'Alene Press. College to hear noted educator Donald Barr, former headmaster of the Dalton School in New York, will speak at North Idaho College Thursday at 11 a.m. under the sponsorship of the NIC Convocations Committee, blah, 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 right? He was at the Dalton School. This is from Wikipedia, where he hired convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein as a math teacher. He also wrote a book in 1973 called Space Relations, which was a science fiction novel about a planet ruled by oligarchs who engaged in child sex slavery. So this was the consultant that they brought in at North Idaho College at the time that Tony Stewart was a bigwig up there, which is very interesting. Yeah, there's bagpiping Bill Barr, but like, just, again, I know that this is like a little bit schizo. This has to be organized into a book or something, but you have these connections of CIA agents, Epstein associates, FBI people, COINTELPRO, and Wayne McInnes. I talked about this on the show a couple weeks ago. Wayne McInnes, this FBI agent that was in charge of the Order investigation, he was in COINTELPRO in the 60s. In 1968, he was actually involved in the DNC uprising in 68 in Chicago, where there was mass violence. He was going around introducing himself as Bill Ayers to people, and encouraging them to start, kicking stuff off. It's absolutely fascinating. I mean, and of course, this had to pass the FBI censor, so this is like the official story. I don't think that this is like the truth by any stretch. I think that you have to read it and then kind of look from a wide angle and start piecing these things together, because there's also a lot of really interesting connections with like the Russian mafia and other stuff as well. But my God, it goes so deep. But yeah, I mean, you've got the Southern Poverty Law Center operating in North Idaho, using groups like the Kootenai County Task Force on Human Relations, the HREI, giving them money, giving them material assistance. And now those groups have turned into Pride in the Park. It's turned into the North Idaho Pride Alliance. They're asking for federal funds from this nonprofit security grant program. Where is Raul Labrador? Where is the DA, Stanley Mortensen? What are we doing? These groups are operating up here with impunity. You can't even protest. Like a couple of years ago, I led this rosary protest at the park against the gay pride thing, and I got reported to the FBI by this group. Do you have something up on your screen?
Yeah, I just have the Substack here I put together. North Idaho Catholic Rosary Walk targeted by human rights networks to police and FBI. And so you were planning a counter essentially, or a rosary walk
yes,
to pray for the Pride event that happened on June 11th, 2022, the same day that the 31 members of Patriot Front were arrested. And it's really interesting because you have a Michelle Beach here, who's an ISP officer who was there the year before, a picture of her with her rainbow sash. And she just actually pulled me over recently, which is kind of funny. But we had a laugh about it. She knew my name, but anyway. But she basically in this article, I got emails from the police department where the director here, you can see this image here. The one on the left here is Jeanette Laster, the director, emailing the FBI, telling them, hey, there's a Catholic Rosary Walk on, this is June 6th, so 5 days before the event. Mm-hmm. Then you have another email from Michelle Beach here, the ISP officer, who said, thank you, I'll get this out to our intel people in case they haven't seen it. So she notified the Coeur d'Alene police, and then there's a flyer here, which I can pull up on my screen. This one here on the right, you can see how the Coeur d'Alene Police Department put out this internal flyer through their intelligence analysts. So now law enforcement, police departments, sheriff's departments have intelligence analysts that relay and send information to and from the fusion centers, essentially. So that's basically what's going on here, is they're letting the local fusion centers in the state and the region or whatever know about it. They're disseminating information back and forth. And at the time they blamed Vince Fox for the Catholic Rosary Walk, which I don't think that was true, obviously.
No, that was not true.
So anyways, just misinformation. You can see, they put here, Vincent has been banned from regular social media platforms and has about 50,000 followers on Telegram, BitChute. So anyways, if you're a cop and you're reading this in the department, and at the bottom it says not wanted at this time, confidential, for official police use only. So they weren't supposed to give me this, but they've done this a couple times. Here's a couple more of these flyers just for people to be aware. So you could probably try to do a record request through your police department. Once you find out who the intelligence analyst is or whatever, you can scrape the domain for your name, whatever. but they're not supposed to give you these. And so one here is from the Coeur d'Alene Police Department, and the other one is from the Spokane Sheriff's Department, just for taking constitutions into the police departments and filming the police.
Right.
So
this is what do they call that? 1A auditing.
First Amendment auditing.
First Amendment auditing.
Yeah. So, anyways, that's how I found out about fusion centers, and then ever since 2017, when I started getting those, I was hooked. And I wanted to know what was going on in the community, and so thank God I did, because it kind of, I think it helped get ahead of the curve a little bit as far as this insidious group that's in our community that are planning, plotting, scheming behind the scenes, and now you have the Zionists that are joining in, and it's just it's quite a mess.
Yeah, no, and I just, I want to go over a couple of these other pieces real quick. Let's take a look, first of all. There's been this big battle in Coeur d'Alene over who the police chief should be. And this blew up last night, and I'm assuming that you haven't seen this yet, have you? Okay, so this is from last night. This is fresh off the press. Dan Gukin, the mayor of Coeur d'Alene, just for those of you who are unaware, we'll go back and we'll play this video. This is the, of course, classic video of now mayor of Coeur d'Alene, Dan Gukin, just to kind of refresh people who we're talking about.
They don't give a and they all, I'm a Bible-believing Christian, I believe in Jesus, and it guides my life. It's a Christian conservative, so Christian family values, Christian conservative, mindless cult member, group-thinking morons. Are you a pussy? You're a pussy. Christians, they tend to be the rudest, most disrespectful jerks I have ever seen. I seriously think if Jesus were here today, he would have a message for everyone who's a Christian, and he would just say, get the f*** those racists and white supremacists. Gay? I felt really gay last night. Come over for a gay time. Really gay. Christian nationalism. Now, but let's cut right to the chase. It's white nationalism. Real hardcore Christians to himself and to go to hell.
So this is, by the way, who the Zionists backed for mayor of Coeur d'Alene, okay? So they backed him. He won. And now here he is arguing with essentially the old guard, right? You've got Randy Adams, the Coeur d'Alene prosecutor, who took over from Mike Gridley, who, like I said, we've got this thread. There's a lot of threads. Mike Gridley was the former prosecutor for Coeur d'Alene. This is him in the pride shirt.
We tried to put tape on my camera lens.
Right. He battered you. He assaulted you. And so now he's out, although he was, very involved with this Kootenai County Task Force on Human Relations. This is, by the way, Tony Stewart, who we were talking about with City Councilwoman Christy Wood. There's Christy Wood and Mike Gridley. There's Josh Hurwitz from the Idaho Department of Justice, the Jewish guy that was, I guess...
Do you have a barf bag around here?
Yeah, no, I don't. But he was concocting all of these terror plots against the dams. Remember, that was a big deal, that apparently white supremacists were going to blow up the dam at Hell's Canyon or something like that. Anyway, so now you've got the new Zionist establishment going against the SPLC establishment over who should be the next police chief, right? And this is what happened at the meeting last night.
It's the table. This is 10 years of documentation of city attorneys attacking our police chief. That's what happens in this city. And that's what this vote is really all about. It is about a power play in City Hall by unelected officials who want to overturn your choice. I am the mayor, and I have authority to make this appointment.
By the way, he won with like 13% of the total registered voters in Coeur d'Alene. So this is like a power play by far. He is not popular. People in Coeur d'Alene do not like him. There was, 35% turnout, I think, at the last election. 35% turnout.
He tried to delete a lot of those videos, didn't he?
Yes, he did. That turned into a big scandal for him. And he won with like 51% of the vote. And what is 51% of 35? We're talking like 18% of the total registered voters in Coeur d'Alene. And now he's trying to be all like, oh, you voted for me, and now you're trying to overturn the will of the people. Bullshit. But anyway, let's keep going on this.
And it is my opinion that the city attorney and others have poisoned this council and biased them against me and against the police chief. And I know this is pretty heavy duty, but I am tired of this shit. I'm tired of having a city attorney who doesn't tell me what the law is, who tells me his opinion that's biased, that he tilts the table. Which is
Mayor,
why I
told you what the law says. I was giving you my opinion.
Do not interrupt me. Do not interrupt me.
Do not accuse me of doing something unethical.
Why are you pissing on me? Why do you do this?
I am not pissing on you. I am giving you what
You're
the
not
Idaho
telling them
Supreme
the whole
Court
truth.
says.
You are not telling him. When I asked you last Thursday, when this agenda was approved, I said, do you have an issue with this item? And you said you did not. That's in the minutes. Why didn't you bring it up then?
I had given you my opinion. I did not want to embarrass you in front of other people.
So you're going to embarrass me in a council meeting?
You decided to continue with the motion despite legal counsel's
This is the
decision.
shit. You guys see the shit that's going on right now? You see the pushback from the city attorney? You wonder who's been poisoned up here, who's been told not to talk to the police association, not to talk to the interim chief, who's been told to ignore things? This is what's going on in this city, and I'm trying to fix it, but I'm getting pushback. I have a legal right to make this appointment. And if you don't like it, you can sue me.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor.
What?
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. That's Kiki Miller.
I respectfully ask that
No, it's not Kiki.
return to some decorum and respect for one another. We're here to
And
do
just
business
FYI,
tonight.
so like
we have an audience.
This woman right here, this is Christy Wood, okay? She's the one that was the head of the Task Force on Human Relations that worked with the Southern Poverty Law Center. She used to be a police officer. She's the one that arrested Krista Hazel for stealing $293 from J.C. Penney, the daughter of the FBI agent. That charge disappeared. It disappeared overnight, and then Ruby Ridge happened immediately. So people aren't like, hey, wait, is there corruption in the FBI and in Coeur d'Alene? No. There's an extremist on the mountain. We got to go kill him and his family, right? This big bait and switch that happened. And then, of course, you've got, what's that Democrat's name? This old fart, Dan English. So just FYI, like this woman represents a lot of the power structure in Coeur d'Alene, the old power structure that was backed by the SPLC, the ADL, and the Coalition Against Human Rights, or whatever the hell it was called. So anyway, continuing with this clip.
It's full of community members and
popcorn.
Teammates.
Yeah, I know.
And I respectfully ask that we try to control ourselves and conduct business that's best for our citizens.
Good luck.
Unbelievable. So that's...
Good luck, because I'm the mayor.
Yeah, right? And so you've got that. Let's go back. I want to bring up this article. Well, this is an article that's worth reading. This was about, and you can find this at the Idaho Tribune. I'll actually paste this in the live chat right now for those of you that want to kind of do some more reading on this stuff and get some more color. But this article, exclusive FBI whistleblower reveals malfeasance in Patriot Front trial. Sealed federal warrant has not been produced in court. Exculpatory evidence hidden by leftist prosecutor. And of course, you see the Southern Poverty Law Center logo right there, obviously photoshopped onto his shirt. But in this article, it details a lot of the collusion back and forth. There was Antifa present, armed Antifa marching around with guns. There were people like Elisa Azar, a felon. She's a rioter involved with Antifa. She was there at this thing. But it was Patriot Front that got arrested, not Antifa. And of course, Patriot Front now being accused of being an SPLC cutout.
Well, and in the court documents too, during the jury trial for 5 of the 31 members of Patriot Front, they came out in court that the plan of action was just to go into the park as far as they could. When they met some sort of opposition, they were going to stop and then
create a confrontational dynamic.
Yeah, no, whatever. I mean, they're just trying to go into the park like everybody else, yes. And so then Thomas Rousseau was to read a speech, and they read that speech in court. There's nothing saying to engage people. Their plan that they told the guys not to engage anybody, not to talk to anybody, not to initiate anything. Mm-hmm. And so, in my opinion, their rights were usurped. And you have these power players trying to, at the time we had something called the United Against Hate program. The DOJ was pushing for local community members to.
We actually have.
Oh yeah, I forgot about.
This was a program, and as you can see here, it was put on by the Department of Justice and the Human Rights Education Task Force, Task Force on Human Rights. This was the SPLC cutout that was functional up here. There's another one too that was happening in Bonner County. This group, that was in Bonner County Human Rights Task Force.
Oh, that was in Sandpoint. Yeah,
that was the one in Sandpoint. And so you can see that there was clear collusion between the Department of Justice and the Southern Poverty Law Center, the Human Rights Task Force.
And so the White House launched that program on September 15, 2022. Mm-hmm. Merrick Garland was there. He ordered all 93 U.S. District Attorneys' offices to participate in the program. And the point of the program is for the DOJ law enforcement to partner with community groups like the Human Rights Task Force, human nonprofits essentially. Mm-hmm. So at a lot of these meetings, you see a lot of these human rights groups, and they're speaking at the event with the DOJ, the FBI. Make sure if you notice any hate to report it to the FBI and DOJ. So there's something called hate incidents, which could they're documented, and so if you actually do commit a crime that would be considered a hate crime, mm-hmm. They could tack, from my understanding, they could tack on these other hate incidents.
Modifiers.
I don't know.
Enhancements.
Okay, that makes sense. And that's sort of what the Idaho's malicious harassment law does, really. So that's really the genesis of, I think, where a lot of our problems stem from, because we already have crimes against, property damage, injuring somebody, that sort of thing. We don't need these modifiers or these enhancements where if you're considered anti-Semitic and whatever, it's ridiculous. It's charging people for freedom of speech, and this is not okay in America, period.
Now, do you happen to remember, this is the one thing I didn't prep. There was this guy, and he was the first person that malicious harassment law was charged against. Do you remember who I'm talking about? Mm-mm. His business card was found in the pocket of a guy at the assassination of JFK or RFK. He tried to blow up. Here's how I'll find it. Man tried to blow up MLK Jr. Come on, man. That's not him. He also ran. Here, well, you can talk a little bit about what you've got. I'll find this guy because it's fascinating. He was initially sent up here. Richard Butler said that he was an SPLC or ADL informant. He was running computer networks and internet back in 1983, but while the internet was still a DARPA program, right? So it's where did he get the money for computer servers to be running a hate network online? Anyway, that's a fascinating angle of this thing.
But I mean, suffice to say, North Idaho's been a playing ground for these nonprofits since the 80s, probably before that even. But I think the 80s really solidified and helped a lot of these nonprofits understand how to get the grant money, how to capitalize on incidents within the community to get what they want. And I mean, it's when you live in North Idaho for a while, especially Coeur d'Alene, and you start to understand the players and how things kind of operate, it's pretty apparent. And then you look at the documentation, and it jumps right out at you.
Hold on, we're gonna see if Grok can come up with this guy, because once I get the name, I've got all of the clippings in my computer and I can start pulling it up. No, that's the wrong guy. No, not Kevin Harfum. Anyway, I'll have to do another episode on this. Honestly, like, I want to do a documentary about this stuff. So if you're watching and you want to donate some money, I think I could probably do a pretty bitchin' documentary.
Like the history of North Idaho, especially, I think. I mean, I don't know if that'd be too much. Like, it won't have to be a mini series, but I think your history and because you're teaching people that have doctorates in history.
Yeah,
right?
there's
people that don't know what you know.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's up here.
You've done a lot of research.
I'm gonna have to circle back on that. But anyway, yeah, I mean, it's just a mess. It's just a mess up here. The amount that our community has suffered based on what the SPLC did up here. You know, like I said, paying these operatives to come into the area, paying to agitate and create confrontation, violence, disorder in the community. And it basically, like, any conservative Christian in North Idaho is branded a white supremacist Aryan Nations member for being against girls going into boys' bathrooms.
Well, and we even had Dan Gukin calling you and I at the 4th of July parade 2 years ago.
Pull it up. That was 3 years ago.
Was that 3 years ago now?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, here. This is.
If I can find it. Hold on. There it is.
There it is. Yeah, pull this clip up.
So we were just filming.
I don't know if the audio will
I did
come
chase them around and boo them. It was fun though.
I don't know if the audio will play.
It should, I think.
Hold your microphone up to it.
You guys are white supremacists. No, we're not. Racist. You're a tyrant. You're a hater. You're a tyrant. White supremacist. You're
What a fucking piece of shit. Oh my God.
No
but
comment.
Anyway, this is what we're doing. And so I'm really hopeful. I am really hopeful that now that a lot of this is coming out, the ties between the SPLC and terrorism. Remember, there was an operative at the SPLC, a lawyer that was charged with domestic terrorism in, I think it was like Atlanta, Georgia. There was Stop Cop City, was this big protest that happened. Andy No covered it.
Oh, I do remember that.
You know, just unbelievable. They were throwing bombs and fireworks at the police, and this SPLC lawyer got charged with terrorism. Now we know for a fact, beyond any shadow of a doubt, because of this federal indictment, that they were paying to create the hate that they said they stood against. And so now that this organization has been disabled, it's out, it's gone. Like, hopefully we're not going to have to deal with that. Granted, there are other groups. The ADL is still operative. Chabad Lubavitch is still operative. There's still a lot of these foreign influence groups that are paying for operatives to create tension and these hate incidents and whatnot.
I'm kind of hopeful though,
but
to be honest.
I'm very hopeful that because we're
it's
normal people. Like,
right.
No normal person wants to be replaced in their own country. No normal person wants to bring in 8 data centers. Which, by the way, that's how many Idaho is considering opening. No normal person wants to live in a town where these trannies are going all over the place in these different restrooms, attacking kids. No normal person wants to live in a society like that. No normal person wants to live in a society where their labor they're defrauded of just wages through inflation, through the Federal Reserve. Like, this is all like normal common sense stuff. So like, if you're against the racial demographics replacement in this country, if you are against usury and what the banking class has been doing to Americans, if you're against the atomization that has been happening, you know, like, this makes you a normal person. And normal people have reactions against this. The problem is that we've had these groups like the ADL and the SPLC that have funded the most ridiculous cartoon character extremist versions of these ideologies to make normal people look crazy and to gaslight us into accepting the liberal narrative, into accepting what the liberals want to turn our society into, this totally mixed up, crazy, no moral order, destruction, And so now that this is out in the open, it's incumbent on us at the local levels to fight this stuff, to get these SPLC and Zionist people out of office and to assert like normal, natural relations among neighbors. Frankly, like that's all we want. We want to be left the fuck alone. That's why a lot of people wind up moving to North Idaho. And so anyway.
Then you find out that's not quite what you thought it was either.
Well, you know, North Idaho is very much the front lines. It has been on the front lines. As we've seen with all of these articles that we've pulled up from the 1980s and on, we've been on the cutting edge of these cultural battles with the SPLC, the ADL, this idea of local sovereignty, autonomy, subsidiarity. And so, we did, just so everybody's aware, I was initially, tonight was supposed to be an interview between me and Michael Thomas, the head of the Catholic Land Movement, but I'm pushing that off to next week. By the way, tune in next Wednesday. We're going to have Michael Thomas from the Catholic Land Movement, who's going to be talking about giving a lot of, I think, rightly ordered antidotes to the disorders in society that we're facing. And, now that we don't have an organization that is, ginning up Klan rallies and ginning up, white supremacist groups and all of this, I think it's possible that normal people can actually try to fight for the country again, which is something that we haven't had in this country for 50 years. For the last 50 years, if normal white people wanted to fight for them and their family and their community, they got branded as an Aryan nation's neo-Nazi.
Well, I think it's really interesting to comment on that press conference in 2024 when the NCAA team was here.
Yes. Oh, let me
the
pull
basketball,
that up too.
because that press conference, how that came together, where it was at, those were the power players all coming together at the Coeur d'Alene Resort to condemn this hate incident, quote unquote. It's so telling to see how they called you out. You asked a question during that press conference.
Yes. Yeah. Is that is that in the article? I mean, I think
that's
it is.
the full presser. If you play the full presser and go to the end, it should be in there. But
yeah. Let's see. Is
go
it
down right there?
Hold on.
That's the full thing.
Let's pull this up.
So we were there at the media. So this is at the shops.
Schizo mode. Schizo program. Come on. Load. This is that guy, Tony Stewart, by the way. Tony was big.
So you had Christy Stewart, you had people on the city council, you had Coeur d'Alene Resort, everybody was there.
Let's try to, is this just
Thank
not
you
going
so very
here
much
we
for
go.
being here.
Yeah, okay. So let's see if we can find.
So this is my footage that I filmed.
Let's see if we can find the clip. Is it gonna, what is happening? Elon, can we please get an upgrade?
Particularly.
Can we get an
upgrade? Should be right at the end.
It was when White. Chief White was. Hold on.
This is pretty funny. That was like the end of the press conference.
There it is. All right, here I'll start it.
It was reported that a vehicle drove by and several racial slurs were yelled by the occupants of the vehicles.
This was fake.
At the time of the report, we were unable to speak to any of the potential victims of the incident, nor were we able to locate individuals who yelled the racial slurs.
Tony Stewart and the human rights people whispering in his ear what to say.
The has an open case in this matter, and detectives are attempting to speak with any victims of this incident. But so far, we don't know exactly who that may be. It was initially reported that there was approximately 100 people who were in the vicinity of the incident when it occurred. We are working cooperatively with our partners at the FBI because there are federal statutes that may be appropriately charged based on what actually occurred. Once again, until we speak with the victims of this incident, and some more witnesses, it's difficult for us to determine which state or federal statutes would be most applicable. I would like to say also that if you're a victim or a direct witness of this incident, you're encouraged to call the Coeur d'Alene Police Department. I'll give you that number real quick. That number is 208-769-2320.
Well, it was right at the end of him speaking.
Our detectives are actively seeking individuals might have taken.
Oh, here we go. Take some questions.
I should add that we work closely with law enforcement at all levels, and the U.S. Attorney for Idaho, Josh Hewitt, Christy and I met with him recently on another matter, not this, but he is also very dedicated as our law enforcement. We have a record that is very important in this community. 1983 was our first case in court when a member of the Aryan nations threatened a biracial couple in this
That would be when they
community.
probably use the
He was prosecuted
malicious harassment
under
law.
verbal
This is the guy I'm
assault
trying
law,
to find his name.
And he was sent to prison. What you might not know, from 1983 until the present time, we have never
There's
lost
Sly.
a case in court in Kootenai County. That is a great record. Other questions, please? Yes.
Yeah, I was curious about, do citizens in Kootenai County have to worry about their First Amendment rights being violated if you can't even cite which law may be violated in this case? Could you also explain how the Kootenai County Task Force on Human Relations has
face.
liaisons with the FBI, and in fact, the Human Rights Education Institute under Jeanette Lasser proactively
Just ask
reported
too
a
many
Catholic
questions.
Rosary Walk on June 11, 2022 to the FBI? Can you talk about that?
I can't speak for another organization, but I can certainly say to you,
REI is part of the Kootenai County Task Force.
no, that we're two separate organizations with separate boards.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just say this to you in a very direct way.
Okay.
We are here to protect citizens from violence and crime, and we will never stop.
Whatever.
Next question.
Like the inverse is true. I mean,
Hold on. Let's see if we can scan through. We've got to find my question because they freaked out and closed the whole press conference.
that was the mayor at the time.
That was the mayor, Jim Hammond.
Fled to Colorado.
Total loser. He's gone.
I'm not saying just verbal. I mean, it was a whole.
Let's see. Oh yeah, here it is.
Brought against
Here it is.
perpetrators is yet to be determined.
Police Chief White, during the Patriot Front investigation.
Hold on a second here.
What, am I allowed to ask a question? My name is Dave Reilly. I have a question for Police Chief White.
This
This
is
is
a press conference.
It's press with the media, not with the general public.
I'm in the meeting.
Well, who are you with? Who are you with?
It doesn't matter. I've got a question for Police Chief White. On July 20th of 2022, cell phones that were illegally taken from Patriot Front were left in an evidence room outside of the evidence locker, breaking policy 802.3.1.
Let me just say this. There is another law
I
called
think-
the verbal assault law. This press conference is ended.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank
There's
you.
and so there's Christy Wood again, right? There's Tony Stewart. These are the guys.
Look
that
how
are,
he's waving too.
Oh, very gay. Very
bit
look at-
effeminate.
Look at the.
A bit.
He's got the.
Yeah.
Stop it, guys. Now, don't ask me what I know about his little incident with the trombone player from North Idaho College. I don't think we should talk about that on the show.
I don't know what
but
you're talking about.
it's out there. For those who know, you know. But yeah, we've had some issues up here, but I'm very hopeful. I'm very hopeful for the future, and I think that.
Well, and I think that their weakness is they can't debate. They can't have an
Well,
open
they
debate.
can't
So why don't we have a debate with Christy Wood and Tony Stewart?
Hey,
and
come on the show,
like,
guys.
Why?
I don't
What's
bite.
with all the
Look, there's plenty of room. You can bring all the files and evidence that you want. I don't bite. Maybe I'll
We
even
should.
have an
I mean,
extra
there should
bottle of.
definitely be an invitation to have a sit down and have a public forum.
Yeah.
What's there to hide?
Well, what there is to hide is the fact that they have been ginning up these racial incidents in Coeur d'Alene, as we saw with the hate hoax that was here a couple of years ago with the basketball team. This whole thing was totally fake. It dominated the headlines. We then found out that there was no white truck, there was no Confederate flag.
There you go.
Right? That was all fake.
the
It was
presser.
totally fake. And we've got this long history up here of Rachel Dolezal, who she faked being black. She faked a bunch of hate crimes. Look at this. There's potential hate crime under investigation. What did this say? In conclusion, I would request that Miss Rachel Dolezal recontact police and demand a polygraph examination to determine if she had anything to do with or if she has knowledge of anyone who participated in the above-mentioned incidents. What say you, Rachel? Because all of this was fake. All of it. It's like we had normal people in North Idaho that, you wind up moving up here because California turned into a different country. Oregon, Seattle, it turned into lawless zones. And it has happened multiple times throughout. If you go back, we did a podcast a couple weeks ago with Paul Banducci. We talked about these waves
that was
of
good.
migration.
That was really interesting.
And so it's like you come up here and then you want to fight for like what's normal and reasonable, and they'll call you all of these names. And I think that they're basically running on borrowed time. I think it's one of the reasons why Krista Hazel is running for office. It's one of the reasons why the North Idaho Republicans is attempting to overthrow the KCRCC, the local Republican Central Committee. You know, it's a big fight, but I'm very hopeful. And so anyway,
me too.
There's just like the tiniest scratch of the surface. I mean, I could spend days with all of the PDFs and the newspaper clippings and the history that's there. Please, if there is somebody out there, you know, throw me like 10 grand. I will make a rockin' documentary about all of this. I'm probably going to make it anyway, not to eBay or anything like that, but there's a story.
I mean, you tell it.
There's a
you
story
talk about the
to
history
be
here,
told.
and whenever you talk about the history of North Idaho, people stop and just. It's extremely interesting.
Well, and let me give a little bit of it, okay? It goes all the way back to the Coeur d'Alene riots of 1892. Let's see,
Yeah, this is awesome. I mean, this needs to be a documentary or something.
Minor.
We're both
riot.
videographers, by the way. So
yeah. So here it is. It starts at the beginning of the foundation of the state in 1892. There was a Coeur d'Alene labor strike that was headed up, and it wound up leading to the formation of the Western Federation of Miners. But you see, there was a labor union that had been infiltrated by a Pinkerton agent who routinely provided information on the union to the mine owners. Then, under the direction of this Pinkerton agent, the miners got violent, and they wound up blowing up a mill. Here's a little photo of the incident with the smoke rising in the background. This was the Bunker Hill Mill that got exploded. Let's see here. The silver mine owners responded by hiring Pinkertons and the Field Detective Agency to infiltrate the union and report on strike activity. Pinkertons and other agents went into the district in large numbers. Then they bring in this guy named Charles Siringo, the cowboy detective. He infiltrates the Irish Catholic Union, gets them to commit violence, and then the governor comes in and locks the entire state down with, what was it called, martial law. They take all of the elected officials, throw them in a concentration camp in Wallace, Idaho, and that was 1892. This whole thing happened again in 1899, where there were people, normal people, Catholics living here in North Idaho that were being defrauded of their wages. They were being replaced by foreign immigrant laborers that would work for less money. And when the white population said, "Hey, we deserve to be paid a decent living wage. We deserve, to work in dignity," they got infiltrated by paid agent provocateurs.
Wasn't there a term?
Union busters. They were called union busters. And it's the same tactics that were employed by the Southern Poverty Law Center and the Anti-Defamation League in the 1970s and the 1980s with the Aryan Nations, which was a group of local people that worked in the mines. They worked in lumber, and they didn't want Coeur d'Alene to turn into a tourist trap. They wanted to produce things. They wanted businesses that actually made real things. They didn't just want to leech off of the land and be some sort of resort town or whatever. And so they tried organizing as the Posse Comitatus, later as the Aryan Nations, and they get infiltrated by paid agent provocateurs that discredit the entire thing, right? And that's what we're dealing with again today here in North Idaho. Normal people that were like, "Hey, I'm not wearing a mask, I'm not taking the vaccine." They moved to North Idaho, and now all of a sudden they're butting heads with this old guard that has been subsidized and working with the Southern Poverty Law Center for decades and decades. So it's a really interesting story that nobody has ever told. And the documentation is there. I'm not just pulling this out of my ass. There's also stuff with the Jewish mafia operating up here, as we saw with Mordecai Levy, as we saw with the Idaho State Gambling Commission. People were blowing up the gambling commissioners with car bombs. That sounds like the JDO. That sounds like the Jacobs Brothers. That sounds like Emprise Incorporated, which was this mafia front company run by Jews in Arizona that was killing journalists for looking into their goofy business practices. That was all happening here in North Idaho. And then, of course, you've got Bobby Wilhelm, Louis Kreitzer, the mafia that were smuggling alcohol from Chicago to Seattle. There is a story up here, and it's really important, and no one's ever told it. And that's one of the things that hopefully, as this show progresses, we can begin to flesh that out a little bit more. Maybe make some more tightly produced pieces of media that runs through the history. I'd like to do that. I think that we can. I think it'll be interesting. Ked Tuzinski said the Mormon Mafia runs South Idaho. Yeah, I agree. Southeastern Idaho, by the way. And thank you for everybody that joined. Today was a crazy show, one of our longer shows. We're going on 2 hours and 40 minutes. So thank you to everybody who joined us. We do have some super chats. We'll be reading those. Please, if you have any last-minute super chats, you can send them in. On Rumble, on YouTube, you can send it with the powerchat.live. I'm gonna have to get in there because I did see a couple of those super chats come in. So give me a second. We're gonna pull that up. Let me pull up powerchat.live. And in the meantime, we do have to continue thanking our wonderful sponsors. Like ODGG Supply, whether you're going blankie mode or you're going tactical mode, ODGG Supply has you covered with blankies, sleeping bags, night vision goggles, and a whole lot more. They've even got piss jugs. Just in case, I'm really serious about selling these
Ukrainian,
piss
aren't
jugs.
they? Ukrainian?
Czech. They're Czech.
Oh, they're Czech. Okay.
Yeah, let me see. CZE.
The shape is very unique.
Yeah, here it is. The medical urine bottle. It is just $17.76 at ODGG Supply. But they do have their APE-approved gear. This is stuff that they have actually tried and tested in the field, whether it's ponchos or weapon lubricant, tents, sleeping bags, glasses, you name it. ODGG Supply is the best. They've also got a fantastic podcast. Alex hosts at ODGG Supply over on YouTube. So please check them out. And if you use promo code Backlash14, you'll get 14% off your order. Don't ask what the 14 represents. It has absolutely nothing to do with anything.
Did you have a good time out there shooting and all that?
Man,
How was the range?
The range was great. We went out at night with night vision goggles.
Did you had tracers? Did you get any 50 cal tracers or no?
No 50. Okay. No, but it was the first time I ever shot a 50 cal.
Way cheaper than I thought.
50 cal tracers?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Well,
yeah.
He pulled up the prices and it was like, whoa.
I don't know, man. And I'm still waiting. I'm like so pissed right now at the ATF. I've been waiting on a Form 4 to come back for like a month now. And it's just like, what are we doing, guys? You can't process, anyway, we'll be doing some more content with them soon. But yeah, odggsupply.com. Check in the show notes below. We've got links to all of their products. Of course, I've also got to give a big shout out to Atlas Bullion. If you are concerned that this, and by the way, wasn't it nice that it's a show and it's like not about Iran,
Yeah.
And I think it's pretty relevant. Not that the Aryan story isn't still happening. That is. It's going to be a problem. There are still supply chain issues that have yet to come down the pike on this thing. I mean, Australia is almost out of oil. They're going to have to shut down because they can't power their country because of the Straits of Hormuz. A lot of farmers are now saying that they aren't able to purchase the fertilizer that they need to do crops this year.
Next year is not going to be fun.
No, it's not. We're going to either hit some sort of inflation or perhaps stagflation, God forbid, some sort of deflationary cycle that could happen.
Top off your preps.
But if you are concerned that your money is going to be worth less tomorrow than it is today, I've got to tell you to go to atlasbullion.com/thebacklash. You can sign up to get gold and silver sent to you the easy way with a gold and silver subscription. It helps you stack precious metals which can't be debased by the government at a whim. You can protect your labor, protect your savings, and actually have something to give to your kids and your grandkids. Because if you're just keeping all of your money in the bank, I think you might be kind of screwed. Obviously, this is not financial advice. I like to eat crayons at night. So don't take financial advice from me. Please call Atlas Bullion, or go to their website, atlasbullion.com. I think now is a great time to be saving in some precious metals. So you can do that with them. Now, we do have some super chats we're going to read. The first one comes from Secret Himmler.
I'm waiting for the horse one.
Secret Himmler, who sent $40. Thank you for the big super chat. The novel Secret Hitler was recently released on Amazon Books and deals with psychological operation where right-wing groups are infiltrated by people trying to use political violence as an excuse to impose a police state. You'll love it. I probably will love it. Let me actually pull this up. Secret Himmler. There's a great board game, obviously, called Secret Hitler. Secret Himmler book. Well, I don't know where this is. I can't find it. Somebody send me an email, info@thebacklash.net. Whoever sent that super chat, please send that my way. I would love to read that book. IRL Con sent $25 on Rumble. Really entertaining show. Well, thank you. Yeah, it was entertaining. We had Gavin McInnes. We had Richard Spencer, Ken Silva, of course, Casey Whalen. So I think it was a pretty good show, pretty interesting. What else? Got to give another shout out to Above Time Coffee Roasters, of course. If you need help waking up in the morning like I do, you need a nice cup of coffee to get your juices flowing. And Above Time Coffee Roasters has just that. They've got non-kosher, small batch, hand-roasted coffee, and they're pro-white. So they don't hate us. They don't want us to be replaced with H-1B workers or AI or whatever. So please visit AboveTimeCoffee.com. Use promo code Backlash10. You'll get 10% off your order. And they really do have some of the most delicious coffee that I have ever tasted. So please, visit Above Time Coffee. If you patronize them, they patronize us. They help us bring you this kind of content, which is very fun and interesting. And hopefully y'all learned something. Hopefully it wasn't too schizo. It was a little schizo.
You didn't have the horse question?
No. Have you ever ridden a horse, Casey?
Well, I don't know. You didn't get. No, didn't
have you
get
ridden
asked.
a horse? Tell me now.
Yes, I have.
You have ridden a horse
when I was younger. Yeah.
Okay. Big shout out to Book Track Grooves. Haven't seen him in a little bit, but and otherwise, like I said, I cannot stress how hopeful I feel. I think that there are factors and things coming into play that is going to make it easier for normal people to live good lives in this country and to be a bulwark against globalism, against replacement. And I think that we're going to see these communities, different communities, pockets developing. And with that, thank you all. Thank you all for joining. Oh, go ahead. Do you have one more? Oh, yeah. Please, go ahead
the
and
screaming
plug.
kid in the background. No, it's all good. No, and thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. It was a long show, but it was really interesting, I think, with the people that joined us. So I'm doing a documentary on Dr. James Fetzer. I'm leaving in a couple weeks to go to my birth state of Wisconsin to chat with Jim and get his life story in the can. He's 85. And so if you'd like to help with the documentary, you can go to gibsongo.com/James Fetzer. And the working title is Truth in Question. If you have any questions about the documentary or how to do records requests or if you have a tip or whatever you're in North Idaho or in Idaho in general, you can reach out to me at North Idaho Exposed, EXPOSED @ProtonMail. I'd be happy to help you out. And again, thanks for having me on, Dave. I appreciate it. It was a lot of fun. About time.
I know it's been a while, and thank you for coming on. You really have done a lot of really tremendous work for the community here in North Idaho. A lot of corruption that normal journalists will look the other way, and you have consistently showed up, put in the work, put in the records requests, got boots on the ground to get the real story. Things like what's going on in Bonner County with the school district up there, like with the hate hoax that happened. You've been all over the state, crisscrossing down to the Capitol, up here.
I've been embedding in communities essentially for months on end, kind of just like a leaf on the wind, trying to help get stories out that are not, people can't get out. So it's, I've kind of got it down now. Like I just went to Potlatch, Idaho, just to help with this board, this recreation board or whatever, and we did an interview with a guy and went and filmed the board. He caught them lying. I filmed it. I mean, it's like dynamite.
Yeah.
So I wish more people understood how to do this, but it takes a long time to do everything, the video, the writing, the interviews,
Sure.
But once you get there, this is awesome, you know.
Yeah.
So
no, and we
definitely God thing.
need more of it. We need more of you doing FOIA requests and more of you getting involved in your local community. Be a pillar in your community. Be a good force for morality, for truth. For the people that are constantly shit on by corporations and these big interests. You need to find your tribe and find your people and come together and put up a resistance to what they're trying to do, because they're trying to make America not America. And they're doing a hell of a job of it, frankly. And so we've got to resist. And I think that certain places will be successful in this. And to that end, we're going to have a big interview coming out next week with Michael Thomas, the founder of the Catholic Land Movement. We'll be discussing Catholic social teaching when it comes to labor, when it comes to work, when it comes to money, when it comes to subsidiarity and your local community. I think that you guys are going to really enjoy the conversation that Mike and I had. And of course, there'll be more information on that. We'll be back Monday. Don't know who the guest is yet. We'll find somebody. But there's going to be a lot going on. Of course, the war in Iran, developments here at home. And so we'll be covering all of that. This is The Backlash. Thank you for joining us. God bless you and have a good night. Bye-bye.